Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular Northampton Planning Board meeting for May of this year. The date is May 3rd, 2022. This evening, we have one case of old business and two cases of new business. To anyone that's here for what was going to be our third case of new business, Case 2207, the applicant is MCL Builders and Developers, LLC. It was concerning a property at 71 North Road, Northampton, New Hampshire. That case has been withdrawn, so it will not be heard this evening if you were here for that case. Before we jump into our old business, I just introduce everyone on the board. To my far left is Rick Milner, the Zoning and Planning Administrator. Next to Rick is Lori Atella, a regular member of the Planning Board. Next to Lori is Phil Wilson, a regular member of the Planning Board. To my immediate left is Nancy Monahan, Vice Chair of the Planning Board. Myself, Tim Harned. To my immediate right is Shep Kroner, regular member of the Planning Board. To Shep's right is Valerie Gamache, regular member of the Planning Board. And to my far right is Jen Rowden. She's with the Rockingham Planning Commission, and she's a circuit rider who assists Northampton on planning and zoning matters. Rick, is there anything we need to deal with before we jump into tonight's agenda?
No, sir, thank you.
Okay. So our first case of old business tonight, our only case of old business, but our first case is case 2122. The applicant is Millie Bauer, LLC, 16 Woodknoll Drive and Prince Corner Garage, P.O. Box 1351, Northampton, New Hampshire. The applicant requests a site plan review to amend previous site plan approval with a change of use and site improvements. The applicants also request a conditional use permit to allow proposed uses within the Aquifer Protection District. The property owner is Millie Bauer, LLC, 16 Woodknoll Drive, Northampton, New Hampshire. The property location is 50-52 Lafayette Road, Northampton, New Hampshire. The map and lot number is 008-024-000. The zoning district is the IDR, Industrial Business Residential District, and it's also in the R1 High Density District. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Board. John Shagnon from Ambit Engineering, representing Millie Bauer, LLC, and Prince Corner Garage. Also here tonight is Tim Phoenix, counsel for the applicants, and the applicants are seated directly behind Mr. Phoenix. So, I can't recall the last time we were at the board. We were here a while ago and discussed the application, and we needed to go to the Zoning Board of Adjustment for a few issues relative to the site plan in March. The ZBA approved a request to grant a special exception for the motor vehicle service facility, and also denied a request to leave the fuel shed in its current location. So we do have a slightly revised plan tonight that shows the relocation of the fuel shed, which the applicant has discussed with representatives of the building department. So the plan set has a existing conditions plan that hasn't changed. Sheet C2, the site plan. Since we've been here, we've revised the plan to relocate the granite that shows on the existing conditions plan, which is located on the section of the property in the residential zone. That shows being relocated over to a place in the industrial zone on the same property. We updated the parking calculation. So just to be clear, we wanted to be sure that the use that was approved met the parking requirements. So it's a service station with one bay, requires 4 spaces. Added those into the parking calc, and we still have a requirement for 27 spaces, or the requirement is now 27 spaces, but we still have 30 spaces, which meets the, and exceeds the requirement. And we identified that these spaces here would be the spaces that would be used for the garage. So that's been done. We show the fuel shed, which if you look at the existing conditions plan is approximately here. It's being relocated to stay on the industrial zone line, stay on this part of the lot. And that's been done with this plan. We also denoted the special exception grant in a note. Those are primarily the changes to the plan since you last saw it. There's a detailed plan, sheet C3. And that plan just essentially shows the same things: the relocated granite, the relocated fuel shed in a larger scale and more easily readable. We're also asking for conditional use permit tonight, so that is a part of your package. And the conditional use permit is to allow the servicing of vehicles in the aquifer protection zone and installation of snow plows and repair work. That work has been approved previously. I believe it was before the zone was extended in this area, but since the applicant is increasing that use, we're back here for a conditional use permit. And the permit includes a cover letter, which we could read in the record, but I think we've presented it before. Basically talks about the Aquifer Protection District guidelines and how this project will be in keeping with the requirements in your ordinance. We also updated the packet with the deed for the easement. Millie Bauer received an easement from the abutter for this landscape area, and to use this part of the lot for vehicle travel. So that's been updated. The plan you have in this plan set is the recorded version, along with the copy of the recorded deed. I think it's a reasonable request, and we look for your approval of the site plan and the conditional use permit tonight. We can talk about the letter from the town's peer review engineer now, or as you deliberate. We did get that today, and it states clearly that the plans meet with the well, the following remarks were that the plans need the conditional use permit, and that should be added to the final plan. The notes about that, and that the narrative providing a description of how the fuel shed is to be relocated, which we also provided, that shows the procedure that the applicants will use to move the shed, that is describing a procedure that will do this in a safe and orderly manner. So also there was a request for a picture of the equipment inside the shed, which we provided. Well, we're here to answer any questions that you have. I don't know if Mr. Phoenix wants to add anything at this point. Okay, yes, he's reminding me that one of the things that we're also doing with this existing conditions plan and application is confirming that everything that exists on the site now is okay with the planning board. There was a question about the pad that was poured being a little bit larger than what was on the original plan, so that shows. So in approving this plan, there's a note on sheet C2 that speaks to sort of procedurally. Note 7. Purpose of the plan is to show the proposed change of use and show existing conditions to be permitted. So if there's any other questions about what's different from the plan that was approved, we could be glad to answer those questions.
And I believe when this first got applied for with the board way back when, I sent out a memo to the board members as well regarding what was changed. I can find it if the board so chooses.
Jen?
Oh, I just have one small comment if you want me to do it now. One item I did notice that changed was the location of the snow storage. And the snow storage that's proposed is in part in the wetland setback. So my recommendation is to seek an alternative to that location, which I think there is room, but that's it.
I have two questions. One for the chair, which is, where are we in terms of having accepted this application as complete, if we had already did that and continued it or not? I'm seeing a no from Tim. From
We
the
have
other
not
Tim.
accepted.
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge.
You got
I-
it.
I can confirm that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was, Jen deemed it incomplete, we had zoning to go through, so it was never accepted as complete.
Number two, I think for the benefit of the board and for the public, would it be possible for John to describe all the permitted uses on the site today? Like, number of apartments, duplexes, businesses, what the use of those businesses today.
I don't think I can do that without looking at notes, but if you give me a minute. All right, so speaking from memory,
Okay.
the project that we came to the board with in
7 years ago?
15 or so involved the purchase of the property by Mr. Bauer, the remodeling of 52 Lafayette Road, and the addition of a dwelling unit on the residential side of the lot. The also then, I believe, maybe at the first instance, I'm not sure, maybe it was, well, second to that was the proposal to construct the garage for the business. So the garage for the business had first floor uses, servicing equipment, maintaining equipment, and the second floor was going to be a dwelling unit, and that is carried forward. The 52 Lafayette Road had some residential apartments, and it had a retail use, I believe. So the project continued that retail use and remodeled the apartment and created workforce housing. And that was all part of the original approval.
So,
Then subsequently, the applicant came back to the board to change the dwelling unit in the back to a duplex.
Yep.
And we say in the parking requirement calculation currently that there are 7 dwelling units on the property. There's one retail space, there's one office space, there's the industrial space being this garage facility, and the application here adds the service bay use for Prince Corner Garage.
Thanks, John.
I have a
Nancy, go ahead.
Mr. Shagna, what is the retail space?
I'd have to ask Mr. Bauer to
Barber shop, next to the, at the end of the apartments when you first pull in.
Okay,
currently, it's a barber
Next to the
shop.
Papa Lynn restaurant.
okay.
Started out as the taro place?
They were selling
It started out as a retail spot.
Okay, and might I ask a clarification question? You said tonight, and it's been said many times and in your paperwork, that the automotive repair and service was previously approved. I don't believe that that's the case, if my memory is correct. There was no variance from the zoning board for a special exception for automotive repair and service. What I recall is that Mr. Bauer, in this entire site plan, was allowed to use the garage for maintenance of his own trucks, but there was no approval for any sort of a public retail automotive service and repair operation. Am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong, and I guess I misspoke if I said it was for the public. My understanding is that the original approval was for Mr. Bauer to maintain his equipment.
His own equipment, but not for the public, because it's been stated in much of the paperwork that this snowplow business is an expansion of an existing business, so I was confused about some of the description. But we're clear, it was not, there was no variance for a special exception until this last zoning board meeting in March? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments from the board? I guess I have a couple, and I've just brain cramped on one of them. But you've presented C1, which is existing conditions. What things on C1, and I don't disagree with it, it appears to be the existing conditions, but what things are shown on C1 that exist that don't have that are not part of an approved site plan?
I think we talked about the size of the concrete slab.
So you're saying that when the slab was originally approved, it was approved for a smaller size?
Correct.
Quite a bit smaller.
I think there were some sheds and the pipe rack was added. I mean, there was some general notes about the use that was intended for this property, but other than that, I'm not sure about anything else. There was a fence requirement. The fence had the use that Greg's shop had to be separated from 52. And so there was a proposed fence, and Mr. Bauer built a fence out of granite blocks. So I think that's a little different. I don't know if you
Well,
mentioned anything else.
the fuel shed is on the previously approved plan, but
Yes.
correct me if I'm wrong, its location on the previous approved plan was in the IBR.
Yes.
That's
And it
correct.
also was not a shed, it looks just like a tank location on a slab.
Coverage too, to set on a pad bare,
Right.
like the fuel shed, the storage bin itself.
Mr. Bauer, if you're going to speak, please identify yourself for the public who may be watching.
Greg Bauer.
Okay, thank you. So my question is, in terms of what's on the existing plan is approved versus hasn't already been approved on a previous plan, is the shed was, a fuel storage area was approved, but it was approved to be in the IBR. And it was actually located in the R1 and is now currently in the R1?
Yes,
Okay. And,
we're gonna move it.
okay, it's existing conditions, I'm just trying to understand what existing conditions are approved conditions and which ones aren't.
Yes.
The traffic pattern around the building, I thought what was originally approved was something that didn't require an easement, and there was going to be a landscape buffer on what I guess is the southwest side of the building, and traffic wasn't going to be going through that region on the last approved plan. Is that correct, or am I
So-
mistaken?
So, that is correct. However, the building that was on the original site plan was, I think, 20 feet shorter?
It was moved, and it was 20 feet shorter.
It was expanded under
We
an
added
amendment?
to it the length, but we also moved the building because it wasn't parallel with Route 1.
So the building that we're looking at now is bigger than what was on the last approved plan?
Let me answer that. No, it's the size that was approved, but there was an original site plan, and then there was an amendment that was approved to let the building be bigger.
Fine with that, that's
Yeah.
an approved site plan.
It's an
I'm
approved site
trying to
plan.
understand what the differences are in what is being presented as existing conditions today.
Yep,
What items of existing conditions today is not something that's on an approved site plan? Because my expectation would be any existing conditions would conform to an existing site plan. And some items appear not to be. I'm just trying to understand, make sure I understand the complete list of what those items are.
okay.
And what created that access easement area is the wall between the two properties was created. It did receive a ZBA equitable waiver to exist.
I understand
Yeah,
that.
I just want to let you understand the full,
Yeah.
of that area.
But the planning board never approved a plan
That is correct.
that encroached on it, whether having,
That is correct.
that was never approved.
Correct. And that's what the applicant is saying is, all these differences that are now there, they anticipate that the board will approve them
I'm
as
just
part of the site plan.
Trying to make sure I understand what
Yep.
was previously approved.
No, I
and was
understand,
not.
yep.
So those are the ones I've noticed. So it's the traffic pattern and vehicles being able to go on the southwest side of the building. Because
I'm not so sure that the original site plan did forbid traffic around the building. I'm pretty sure that there was enough room to,
No, the original 2015 plan
Yep.
did not allow for traffic around the building. The
Had landscaping.
2018 amendment may have, I don't have that on file.
It didn't change between, the size between,
But the landscaping that was proposed
Right.
prevented traffic.
yeah.
that's what, the landscaping that was
Right.
originally proposed and the landscaping that was on the last plan approved by the planning board prohibited traffic from going through the landscaping.
If I may, Tim Phoenix, counsel to the applicants. I could shed a little more light on this particular issue, which is that the location of the approved fuel tanks and the narrowness of the space between the building and the neighbor didn't allow. So it wasn't that it wasn't allowed, it was physically not possible because of this physical layout of the lot. Because of that, Greg, and correct me if I'm wrong, ended up, the reason the tank was moved into the shed was to create room for fire access. And there's a letter in your packet, I have copies of it for you today, where the fire chief wrote a letter of, what I would call a letter saying, we like our fire trucks to be able to get all the way around the building, so we're happy that this happened. And the way it happened was that when Greg approached the neighbor about this issue and seeing if he can get an easement, you've all been out there and seen the granite block call it a wall, call it a fence, whatever it is, that's holding up soil because the neighbor's property, Mr. Patton's property, is higher, and in that is where the shrubs were packed. Mr. Bauer met with the then building inspector, and Travis, who I understand is no longer here, was also present, and the building inspector approved that location, so it was put in, but without approval of either this board or the zoning board, because it was within the setback. So we ended up getting approval last month for that location of the wall and the shrubs and what have you that Mr. Patton's granted a variance on, excuse me, an easement for, that you have a copy of as recorded in your packet, and was approved, as Rick said, by an equitable waiver, in March, I guess it was. So that's the history of it, that the extra area was intentionally done to create round the building vehicular access, primarily for fire protection, as I understand it.
Mr. Chair, may I just clarify? And that may have been the applicant's intention. I just wanted to be clear that the fire department was not part of any plans ahead of that being created and did not advise the applicant to create those areas or move the shed. The fire department's letter is after it was all done. The applicant asked the fire department to look at it, and the fire department, after it all was all done, said, yeah, we like extra access around the building. Yeah, we like where the shed is, but they were not part of the original plan to do it.
Yeah, nor did I say that they were.
Yeah, I
His
just wanna
letter
make
was in
sure.
November.
Yep.
I might have misspoken by omission, which was not my intent, but I don't think anyone could argue that the situation is now better with access all the way around for the fire department. And the chief's letter, and I think it was November of '21, that's the message I have from that. And I think it's been given to you already. As I said, I have copies here if you want to see them again. Beyond that, I guess I'd like to know and we've got sort of two parts to this, and I think the chair is absolutely correct that this board needs to know what was approved and what's changed. I'm a little confused as to whether existing conditions is today or before things that weren't approved were done. We can sort that out. But we've got the site review issue, and then we've also got the conditional use permit issue for the aquifer protection. So I don't know if the board wants to deal with one discreetly and, ask questions about that, and then go to the other, or go through our whole spiel, or what?
No, we'll get there.
Okay.
So, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board at this time? Jen?
Just a comment that the other item that is different from the original approval is the dumpster pad location. I actually think it's in a better location by the Fern Road entrance. It was previously approved sort of behind the parking associated with the garage. It's just one other note.
Help me, where is it? Is it on?
It's next to the handicap parking spot. You'll see the dumpster
Oh,
pad.
sure, yeah, okay. You mean on the existing conditions it is, yeah.
Yeah. Originally, it was closer to the wetlands.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nancy?
There was a mention, I think at least twice in the town engineer's letters over this time, that something called a gravel laydown area was also not on the original site plan approval. I'm not sure if that's what that is or where that is.
He may be talking about the R1 section of the property, because there was items put in the R1 section of the property in the past, and there were, in the original approval, or the original versions of this plan, there were the granite blocks, and there was material storage in the R1, so I think that might have been what he was talking about.
In the original?
In our original, yeah, that's why a lot of these items are now moved on this plan, because they were not allowed. I can check his original review letter, I have it here, to see.
Yeah. While he's doing that, I can add as well. That's a good question. I had the same one, and actually asked Greg today, and he wasn't sure what Steve meant. I interpreted it as being the area, the R1 area, where the history of that is we had originally proposed and sought approval through the variance process to store aggregate and loam and his granite block, and of course the fuel shed got built there. all of that was denied. That variance relief was denied. Much of it was withdrawn from the request, all this aggregate storage, loam storage, all that. Plow storage was all voluntarily removed. And what we ended up requesting was for the granite block that he uses for seawalls and whatnot, that's been around the perimeter of the residential area, and the fuel shed, which was built just over the line in the residential area. We asked for that to be approved by variance, and those were denied. So presently, there's no commercial uses of any kind permitted in the residential area. And I think that's what Steve Harding meant by the laydown area, because that's where gravel would be, stored and whatnot.
And I can confirm that is basically, Mr. Phoenix and I are saying the same thing, and I've pulled up his original review letter. He's, as shown on the drawings, this portion of the premises is situated in the R1 high-density district. And he's talking about the southwesterly portion of the premises as a proposed storage area to utilize an existing gravel surface area situated on the southwesterly portion of the premise as a proposed storage area. C3 identifies specific laydown areas for the variety of materials and equipment to be stored at this location. As shown on the drawings, this portion of the premises is situated in the R1 high-density residential district. And then he says that this is not in conformance to the zoning ordinance and a variance may be necessary.
So when was that letter?
This was his original one in August of 2021. He had a second one in October, which
Is that stone?
most likely, as we understand, has the same note on it in October as well of 2021.
So that was not the original site plan issue?
That was for
It was a
this-
subsequent, yeah.
This was for this application process that got
Right.
started last year.
Yeah, last summer. One other thing that I just remembered and noticed looking at John's plans, I'm not sure if it's a site review issue, but one of the things that was worked out with the town and the neighbors, the Sylvan area neighbors, was that Greg agreed to plant, to block access, which he's done through boulders, so to speak, and plant a row of arborvitae. So that is not on the existing conditions plan. It is on the site plan, and they do exist. And they were done to deal with the neighbors' issues with noise and visually through the residential area to the IBR area.
Okay, thank you. To try to move on and address the issue of accepting jurisdiction, does the board have a preference whether we deal with the site plan first, whether we deal with the conditional use permit first, whether we consider them both together? Does the board have a preference?
I think we should, at the very least, consider the site plan first, because they're so integral, and not, or do them together, but not the conditional use permit before the site plan.
Does anyone
That
else?
would be my recommendation.
Does anyone else have a strong opinion one way or the other? How do people feel about the completeness of the application and applications and willingness to take jurisdiction?
I have a question about one of the things that in the original site plan request was included a waiver of the paved parking requirement. You'll recall that the board, on Jen's advice, said that that was not needed because there was no public usage of this lot. So my question now then becomes, now that you're proposing public use of this lot through the Prince's Corner Garage, do we need to revisit that issue of the waiver of the paved parking? And if so, is this application complete?
I don't think you need to worry about, the waiver itself, I don't think is required. It's existing, it's already gravel. Whether you want to require paved parking for the public use, that certainly can be considered during your deliberations, but I don't think for jurisdiction
Okay.
that waiver is necessary.
Thank you.
I'd move to accept the application as complete.
The application for the site plan, the conditional use permit, or both?
For both.
Okay.
I'll second.
Do I have a second? Second by Phil. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of accepting jurisdiction?
6.
Opposed? So, 6-0, Rick.
Thank you.
Okay, further comments, questions from members of the board?
I had, I guess, not really a question, maybe a suggestion, or actually seeking clarification on the proposed arborvitae hedge. And, you know, having lived around here a long time, and everybody in this room's probably lived here for a long time, there's a difference in the quality of arborvitae, right? You have a traditional arborvitae, which deer love to eat and don't typically really work very well. And then you have what's commonly referred to as a green giant. So they're slightly larger, but they tend to shield deer, and they also tend to grow well in this environment. So I was just trying to get some.
That's what we planted,
Okay,
the whole row.
okay. Good, I just want to know.
And that was for the reason too, so they would grow big and large to grow a buffer between Sylvan and me. And they have irrigation and they get fertilized regularly.
Cool, sounds good.
That's what's on the schedule, on C2.
I have both, and the green giants are vibrant and growing nicely, and the other ones just become deer food and slowly disappear. Thank you.
Comments, questions from members of the board? Phil?
I just have a question about the tanks you gave us. Thanks for giving us the pictures of the fuel tanks. Are they, how do they secure the oil from leaks and so forth?
They're double lined.
So it's a
So
double
there's one
wall?
tank outside, there's one inside, it's double lined and insulated.
Okay. And what's the capacity of each?
500, off-road and on-road,
Pink and plain?
pink and green.
500 gallons, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Shagnon, you said that with this new plan now, with the fuel shed moved off the residential, that the location was discussed with the building department. Is this did the building inspector approve of this location?
I'll let Mr. Bauer answer that. He hasn't even-
We realized that the location of the fuel storage shed wasn't gonna work in, we'll call it the driveway around the building. I took it upon myself to put it over in the corner.
I think he's talking about this,
The new
No, we're
location.
talking-
Oh, no, the new one?
The new location?
Yes, ma'am.
because the original, I can, now, it's jogging my memory, the original approved plan stated that the final location of the fuel shed would be reviewed and approved by the building inspector.
Yes.
So before showing a new location, he did meet with the building inspector.
2 weeks ago. And we went over the location, and John's engineer came out and gave us a commercial line, you know, like a straight line, this is commercial, and this is a residential, and we're putting it right next to the sheds. Downside to it is it's closer to Sylvan.
All right. So do we have official approval from the building inspector for the
I can
location that they're showing for the shed?
The building inspector has moved on, I'm not sure if there's a letter, but I can confirm, since I was part of the process, that the building inspector did go out with Mr. Bauer, as he states, and they did come to an agreement that that both approved of the location, subject to the planning board. The building inspector understands that he can't give full approval, but he was satisfied with the location that is presented.
Thank you.
And then we had the engineers come out and do the commercial line, and we set it on the opposite side. Yes,
We will be. We haven't yet, because we haven't gotten permission.
Step up to the microphone when they talk.
There's one other thing I'd like to add about the pad. The original pad was pretty short as it was approved on the originally approved plans. And he did make it larger, and the reason it's larger is because his trucks are, what, 25 feet long? Yes. And so he can clean them off better there and then get them into the shop, rather than have half the truck, in the gravel while he's trying to clean off the front of the truck and then driving all the gravel. So between that and our request that that's one of the locations, this came up afterwards, that we want to store snow plows, we believe that the larger pad is reasonable and is necessary for the reasonable operation of his business.
So the original size of that was 12 feet, is that right? Yes.
12 by whatever the width it is today.
And now it's 40 feet?
Yes. The width of the building is 50.
Anyone else, questions, comments at this time?
I think it's 45.
Open a public comment period. So at 7:15, I will go ahead and open a public comment period. Let's first open it for the public who wants to make comments on the site plan. Please come up to the microphone, identify yourself, and we would like to hear your comments. Going once, going twice, 3 times.
Before you close the public hearing, sir?
Huh?
May I make a comment before you close the public hearing?
Sure.
I've had inquiries from the public, and during the ZBA process, quite a few abutter letters, town resident letters were presented for this case. And some of them were addressed to the planning board, and I've distributed those letters to the planning board. I just want the board to understand that there were several letters supporting the application and several letters not supporting the application. And we did receive one late today from a person who had previously sent a letter as well. So so I just want to make sure that the board is aware and the public is aware that their letters have been put in front of the board and the board is aware of them.
And I would like to add to that, if I may. Nancy, did you want to ask a question first?
Well,
Go ahead.
we're still dealing with the public comment period, so let me wrap that up.
Okay.
So we had no one who wanted to make a public comment on the site plan, so at 7, what?
I wanted to, I looked at those letters, briefly, they came in, and many of those we had seen before.
Yes.
But I'm wondering if at least the ones that are new, that we didn't see before, could be read in, as part of the public comment.
The only, I guess,
How many are?
my only issue is I'm going back over the extended period of time. I'm not sure which ones you've seen and which ones you haven't. The only one I know that you haven't seen is today's.
Well,
which,
perhaps we could read that one.
Okay.
So it's in the,
and I think in fairness, then I'm gonna maybe read Mr. Patton's letter as
Those are
in
probably the
fairness.
two strongest for and against.
Yeah, okay. So,
Before you do, before he does, let me, if I may just comment on that particular issue. Up here, I use this in the zoning board matter, and the blue T looking is Greg's property. And the pink, which is almost everyone who touches them, all wrote letters in favor. Not only specifically in favor of Greg's uses for variance and otherwise, but also specifically approving Scott's intended use. Most, and I have a list here of the letters in opposition, almost all of those, I won't say all, but the majority, the significant majority, addressed only their concern about using residential property for commercial uses. A couple, and Ms. Soleil is one of them, objects to anything they want to do out there. By my count, there's another person, Mr. McMillan, who specifically said, I don't have any problem with with Scott Prince's intended use. I have a problem with the commercial use on the residential zone. And you have copies, Rick submitted those. The vast majority were not submitted to this board. They were submitted to the zoning board in complaints about the commercial use in the residential zone. So, and yet we have 8 or 9 letters specifically from the neighbors, notably Mr. Patton, who's the closest one to any of this, which were specifically in favor of both Greg's intended uses and Scott's intended uses. So there's approximately the same number, maybe a few more letters of opposition in the town files than there are letters of support, but I think there are far fewer letters of opposition about the activities, the current industrial business use in the industrial business zone.
I'm not suggesting that, all the residential letters, that's not relevant for here. That's already settled. So I don't think this board, we did get some of those early on. I'm not even sure if they were
Yeah.
residential or what, but that's not an issue here. I'm talking about the current letters.
Yeah.
Whatever the current letters are for this.
The reason I brought it up at all is because Rick sent to this board, I think today, pretty much all of the letters. And I think that was the right thing to do, given the 6 or 8 month history of this and, different hearings and different letters. But I needed to make the point for my clients that those letters, while given to you, are not necessarily related to your.
No, I understand. No, I'm not suggesting we read those. There was one, I'm not sure which one it is, Rick. Somebody who said they were planning to come tonight, but they couldn't because they have COVID. And I just thought.
Right, and that was, right.
Acceptable to read.
That's the one from today, and I think it is a good idea to read that one,
Right.
Mr. Patton, and that
Yeah,
kind of gives you a flavor.
yeah, and fair, and just to qualify, I think to say, I think a lot of residents, since both of these cases were happening at the same time technically, they were both filed, the ZBA and the planning board. I think to suggest that, in my opinion, and based off of the discussions I had, I think people were confused as to who am I sending this letter to? So that's why I sent all the letters to both boards, because I think certain people may not understand the process and may have intended something for planning, but said this is for zoning, not knowing the difference. So I just want to kind of qualify that a little bit. But that being said, so for today, let me find, please, by date.
Rick, would you state who the letter's from before?
Absolutely.
Before you read the letter?
Absolutely. One moment, please, sorry. Get to the current town engineer. Okay, so, so this is the letter that we received today. This is from Deborah Soleil, a town resident. This commercial land is so small, Mr. Bauer did not place fuel shed where approved by town, but on residential land. If Mr. Bauer felt, I should say, I'm putting in Mr., I apologize. If Bauer felt he didn't have enough room for his original business and encroached on residential land, it would not be prudent to consider adding 2 more businesses. Scott Prince states he would only add 1 to 3 vehicles daily and would be appointment only by a single user himself, and Prince Corner Garage will not have traditional business hours, as Scott is the only technician. Schedule flexibility is paramount, and appointment times are at our discretion. And she's stating that's a quote from the application. Per page 2 of the proposed use for Prince Corner Garage document provided. Prince also stated when questioned at the last ZBA meeting in March 2020, it would be good if the business were to grow and he could add more help. Mr. Prince stated these 1 to 3 vehicles won't change anything at the location, but it will change enough that he states right up front he will be adding his wife Nicole as administrator in an office on site or at home to handle the additional business. There is also a second request for a snowplow business, which would have 60 to 80 cases of plows. It was stated at the ZBA meeting they would be placed on a small pad outside, later stating some could go inside the blue garage. This is the same garage where service business wants to operate. Once again, I do not believe this should be allowed, as there are aquifers, neighbors, and congestion of traffic in and out of Fern Road into Lafayette Road, which has already been spoken to by so many of the neighbors at multiple meetings. The neighbors have been going to meetings, speaking up, writing letters. If you haven't had a chance to listen to the last ZBA meeting, it would be informative. Unfortunately, I cannot be there tonight, nor can a couple others who were planning to, as we have COVID. I asked if we could call in, but that request could not be granted, so at the last minute, I am attempting to share my concerns again. I also asked the planning board read the letters submitted and read at zoning, as so much of what is discussed at ZBA is pertinent to tonight's planning board meeting. I was told it would be the planning board's discretion. So I humbly ask that you read each letter that each resident took the time to write as we bounce from ZBA to planning board. The neighbors have been let down by the town over the years, as stated by Averill LeBeau, Sylvan Road, at the last ZBA, and have been begging for assistance. This piece of property was approved to be developed with certain permissions that were disrespected and ignored. Please do not let it continue to grow. It has been a while since you all may have walked the property, but as you drive by, you can see there is now a tall rock wall. It may be okay as it is on commercial, but it is another example of the consistency of 7 years that neighbors have been feeling the earth shake beneath them as boulders and other materials being moved around. The earth is not just shaking and pounding, but it's loud, and trucks are constantly beeping. It was determined March ZBA meeting that Bauer did not have permission to have aggregate materials in residential land, and they must be removed. They have not been removed, and we would also request this be done ASAP, but told we need to fill out a request from the town. If there is anything that can be done tonight to set a deadline on this, it would be greatly appreciated. At the last meeting, it was requested to be done before summer, so neighbors could once again enjoy their backyards. Respectfully, Deb Seeley, and then there's a picture attached showing vehicles on the property.
Okay, thank you, Rick. You
Yep.
go ahead and read the letter from Patton next.
Yep, thank you. Case letters.
I have a hard copy of it, if it'd be helpful.
Yeah, I just want to, yeah, if you like, yep, yep, if, close current tab, thank you, close. Gerard Patton, 1 Fern Road, Northampton, New Hampshire. To zoning board members. My name is Gerard Patton, and I reside at 1 Fern Road and have been a member of this community since 2002. I would like to take this opportunity to express my opinion in regards to the zoning relief requested by Millie Bauer, LLC. I believe I have approximately 300 feet of property line abutting Bauer's commercial property. I personally believe the improvements Bauer has completed to date on the property is by far exceeding what I expected. I am not sure if board members remember what the property looked like prior to being purchased by Bauer, but as a resident and an abutter to Bauer's property, I am grateful that it was purchased by Greg. The work completed to date has significantly improved the view looking from my house and Route 1 to the property. I remember the weekly ambulance runs and police visits to the old rundown crack house. I remember the automotive dump at 5 Fern Road. I ask, has any board member actually walked or viewed the upgrades that Bauer has completed? Again, this was done in October prior to site walks. Has any board member actually seen the quality of workmanship in the residential homes built by Bauer? Has any board member viewed the overall landscape completed by Bauer? This is not a member or butter that can there is not a member or a butter that can honestly say the work completed by Bauer is not a betterment to the neighborhood and community. I have been a home builder for 30 years. The residential homes he built is top quality. I am impressed by the standard that Greg sets when he is working on his property. His equipment is top-notch, and work yard is kept meticulously clean. It is simple to determine just by driving by the property the effort that is needed and the commitment it takes to have the property clean and organized as it is. I communicate with at least one member of his team on a daily basis. The important thing to me is the way my wife is treated by Bauer employees. Bauer employees are friendly and respectful. I met Greg prior to his purchasing the property next door. He knocked on my front door, introduced himself to me and my wife with plans in hand. He has been an open book when it comes to what work was going to be completed. He went above and beyond to make sure the trees planted along my property would help support and not undermine my driveway. And Greg assisted me on drainage issues. I, as his closest abutter to his daily activities, have no complaints other than I wish Greg bought the property long ago. Bauer's team is committed to excellence. I see this every day in how the equipment is operated, handled, washed, parked, etc. The noise level coming from my neighbor is definitely less than many activities along Route 1 in Northampton. I have been self-employed for 30 years, and I am a firm believer that no one should have their right to improve, making a better living infringed upon. In my opinion, the relief that Bauer is requesting for Scott Prince will not alter, change, or undervalue any abutters. I firmly believe Bauer should be granted the relief requested. Respectfully, Gerard Patton.
I just happen to have these were given to the zoning board. These are the pictures that Mr. Patton mentioned. Sorry, the poor quality, because the photocopies of photocopies. But they give you an idea of what the site looked like before Greg bought it.
You know how I feel about material that's handed out at meetings that people don't have a chance to properly
You're
review.
just looking at pictures, Mr. Harmon. If you want to take them back, I'm certainly willing to do it.
Okay, so at 7:29, we will go ahead and close the public comment period. Most of the material we've covered in the letters I was going to get to after we close the public comment period. I think just in terms, so people are aware, we have just had 2 letters read to us, but in addition, just so people are aware, in addition to those 2, there were 11 other letters from residents in the area that were in opposition to the project that were submitted to either the planning board or the ZBA. And having read them all, one of the things I noted was all 12 letters that were submitted in opposition were unique letters. Every one of them was written by the people who sent it in. In terms of the people speaking in favor of the application, there were 8 additional ones that I received for a total of 9. And other than the one that Rick just read, the other 8 were all basically identical ones that were just signed by different people. So the people wouldn't have signed it if they didn't believe it, but I just would like to point out that they were all basically the same. So now I'd like to go ahead and, while we're in public comment, open a public at 7:31, open a public comment period on the conditional use permit application. If anyone would like to speak to that, come up to the podium, identify yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Shep.
I was just going to ask Tim to clarify so people understood that the conditional use permit that we are being asked to grant is specific to operating of a motor vehicle servicing facility within the aquifer zone.
Protection District, thank you. Yep. Jen?
Just one other thing, the original approval where Mr. Bauer was only servicing his own vehicles, it did not require a conditional use permit, because at that time, this property was not in the aquifer district.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again,
This is a public comment period?
oh, you haven't heard from us about it yet.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So we'll rescind the public comment.
Yes, so I'll
Thank you.
rescind opening the public
Yep,
comment period.
Thank you.
I kind of thought I was part of the public comment, but perhaps not. Again, Tim Phoenix, on behalf of the applicants, I want to take you through, I want to again recite, Mr. Harned was correct in stating the formats of the various letters, but again, if you read those letters, you will have to agree with me that most of them are complaining exclusively, not all of them, but most of them are complaining exclusively about Mr. Bauer's operations on his site, primarily the storage of materials on the lot. Maybe one of them, maybe 2, have anything to say about Scott Prince's use on the site. So to again for the record, how do we get here? We were here in September for this, and it was deemed incomplete primarily because we needed zoning relief first. And we got relief for the wall and shrubs next to Patton. The commercial storage and the shed were denied, and the special exception for Prince Corner Garage was granted. And that special exception language is important, in my opinion, here. Although it is the zoning board, what they granted for special exceptions followed the purpose of the IBR zone, which I'm reading from here, section 202.5A, that Northampton encourages business development and growth in the IBR district because businesses provide jobs, make a significant contribution to the tax base, and serve the needs and conveniences of the citizens. Now, you have to balance that, of course. It goes on to say businesses in Northampton must, however, be compatible with the town's environment, given the fact that a number of important aquifers lie under the IBR district, as well as a significant number of residences in and adjacent to the IBR district, the safety, health, and quiet enjoyment of which must be protected and maintained, and that's why we're here. The special exception was required because of what I think you'll have to agree is a very minor increase, particularly compared to Mr. Bauer's operation. Virtually all of the complaints that the neighbors have submitted either at zoning board hearings or in writing have to do with Mr. Bauer's existing and permitted operation. It's true, I call it a clash when an IBR district is up against a residential district. There's always some stress there because the two types of businesses that are there are not necessarily compatible. So they've been complaining about noise from Greg's trucks and heavy equipment, storage and dropping of materials on the ground in the residential and in his own district, that kind of thing. Well, Scott's business does none of that. We have given you the summary of how his business is intended to operate. It is going to be just him for now. And the comment, which is correct, that he would like to see the business grow in the future, is something he'd like to see. But if it were to grow, they'd have to be back here for a further expansion of the nature of the business. So he's going to work on cars 1 or 2 a day by appointment only. All of the work is done indoors. There may be a car, maybe 2 waiting to be worked on, but there's no broken down cars, etc. The plows are all, he works on trucks with existing plows primarily in the winter, but new plows, the season is from August through the winter, I would say. The new plows, most will be stored out on the pad, the concrete pad that we've talked about earlier. They intend to store some indoors as well, of a variety of types, and the idea would be that he would try to use the ones that are indoors first and mount those, and then bring others indoors so that he's operating from indoors. There's no noise to speak of, other than maybe when he's bringing a plow into the garage to mount on a truck, and the starting of an engine of a truck to move it in, but is no different than any other automotive repair use. And the zoning board recognized that by granting the special exception, which had defined that Scott's use would not cause any unreasonable adverse effect upon abutting or neighborhood, residential, or other uses with respect to pollution, discharge of harmful or noxious substances, noise, dust, vibration, smoke, odors, light, spillage, or other unpleasant, unhealthy, or hazardous byproducts of the proposed use. That finding means that Scott can now do this, otherwise meaning that your view, purview, is with respect to what's the effect upon the aquifer. He also can't unreasonably adversely have any adverse effect upon any water resource, the environment, the health or welfare of any residents, or the quality of life in a lot in or adjacent to the IBR district. That's the requirement. The relief was granted, so that's been found as far as the zoning board was concerned. Under the section 710 of the ordinance, the zoning board looked and required that the uses properly controlled as to number, area, location, or relation to the neighborhood, and would promote the public health, safety, welfare, morals, order, comfort, convenience, appearance, prosperity, or general welfare. So they found that was met. Nor can it diminish the value of surrounding properties, as evidenced by letters of the support from the abutters, the nearest neighbors are fine with not only specifically those letters were relating to Scott's use, not the overall use of the property and noise from, say, Greg's use. They found that the special exception would not unreasonably adversely affect the public interests, safety, health, or welfare, nor cause abutting or neighboring lots to be subjected to any form of pollution or discharge of harmful or noxious substances, noise, dust, vibration, smoke, odors, light spillage, or other unpleasant, unhealthy, or hazardous byproducts. I don't read that to you to suggest that it overturns or means that you don't have anything to say about this, but you do, because you do, related to the aquifer protection. I just think it's important that a town board has looked at this carefully for the purposes of what most of the neighbors have been complaining about, and found that Scott's particular use, which is very quiet, is not a problem. As far as the aquifer is concerned, I'm reminded, and I took note of it at the last meeting when we couldn't go forward, but I remember some preliminary comments from this board about it, and Mr. Croney commented, and I don't know the exact words, but the message I took from it was, this proposed expansion is essentially nothing compared to the effect upon the aquifer protection of everything up and down the Route 1 corridor. The cars traveling, thousands of cars a day. There's gas stations in there. There's parking lots with cars in them all day long. There's other local businesses. There's tractor sales and repair places, and other less problematic businesses. But any of the substances or oil, those kinds of things that would be used in Scott's business are already used in Greg's business, and there are procedures in place which Greg and or Scott can address about what they do with waste oil, what they do if there's a spill inside, that kind of thing. The plows are sealed. There was some colloquy last time, primarily between Mr. Wilson and Scott, about what's in the plows, and there is some residual oils, but the ones that are stored are new. They're unlikely to leak, and if they were, they're going to be leaking onto that pad where it can be seen and cleaned up. The bottom line is that, at least in my opinion, and we hope you agree, this is a very negligible increase in the use, and completely negligible, de minimis, I guess is what would come to mind, compared to the current effect upon the aquifer of all of the other uses up and down Lafayette Road, and particularly on Lafayette Road with cars going by and whatnot. So turning to the requirements of the conditional use permit, the first, this is under section 503.6, the proposed use will not detrimentally affect the quality of the groundwater contained in the aquifer by directly contributing to pollution or by increasing a long-term susceptibility of the aquifer to potential pollutants. And our response was, this was when we were trying to store raw materials in the residential area, so I'll skip that part. The storage of the plows on the lot and working on cars and small trucks in the lot will not adversely affect groundwater quality. It certainly won't any more than what's going on there today and what's going on up and down the Route 1 corridor today. Similarly, the storage of the plows on the pads and new snow plows to be installed inside the existing commercial building are not going to negatively affect groundwater quality. I don't want to embellish too much, but as I've mentioned, site is previously approved for Greg Bauer's excavation and construction activities. There are numerous large trucks, small trucks, heavy equipment that's operated on and off the site and worked on all of the time. It's agreed that at that time it was not in the aquifer protection district, but it was approved. It's there. It's more impactful in all respects than what Scott wants to do, which is basically do some business to make a living for himself, his wife, and his 3 kids. The second requirement is that the proposed use will not cause a significant reduction in the long-term volume of water contained in the aquifer or in the storage capacity of the aquifer. We think it's pretty clear that there will be no change. Scott's already an employee. He's already driving his truck there every day. He just wants to do work on other people's cars on an appointment-only business. It's going to discharge no wastewater on-site other than that typically done today. There may be a customer using a restroom from time to time, but essentially it's going to be Scott and the existing Bauer Construction employees. And then finally, the proposed use will discharge no wastewater on site. Did I read this? Other than that, typically discharged by domestic wastewater disposal systems. Because there are already commercial activities on the site, this isn't going to bring a use that has overnight people, so it's not going to really change to any degree that I think would be measurable the discharge of wastewater on the site. And finally, the proposed use complies with all other applicable paragraphs of this Section 503. And if you look at Section 503, it talks about the authority and purpose to protect the public health, to avoid practices that would contaminate or reduce or discharge or the recharge, to assure availability of public and private water supplies for present and future growth. And we don't think this harms them. It is true that under the ordinance that a motor vehicle service and repair station is one of the items that is specifically flagged or identified for needing a conditional use permit because they use petroleum products, et cetera. But for the reasons I've stated, we think that those are well protected. I think many of you on the sidewalk came inside the building and were where Greg explained not only the history of the site with he and his family, but his operations, and I think he showed you where they store oil and stuff to clean up oil if there's a problem. And I think you would have to agree that they run a pretty clean operation inside that garage. So I've gone on long enough. I'm happy to answer questions, as is the team, but we really feel that most of the, pardon the pun, noise that's been issued about this whole project is the activities of Bauer Construction. There's been no specific complaint that I'm aware of about the activities of Scott on the site. We're asking that you permit this very minor expansion to allow Scott to better support his family. Questions?
Questions, comments from members of the board?
Are these questions pertaining only to the CUP application, or are they?
At this time, yes.
Okay.
I didn't hear that question.
I just asked him if the questions that he was asking us to possibly ask were only about the CUP.
Gotcha.
Or whether they were about the general site plan. That's all.
Okay.
And I was told CUP.
Cup.
I thought we'd heard what was being presented on both of them. That's why we accepted jurisdiction of both
Yeah,
of them. But
yeah.
I thought you wanted to handle the discussion about them discreetly.
Did you have anything relative to the cup?
No.
Okay, so you want to circle that. Anyone else? Jen?
Just with any use such as this and an aquifer protection district, I always recommend that following best management practices are a condition of any potential approval, and that any toxic or regulated substances are stored in such a manner.
Anything else from anyone?
I have a procedural question on the CUP. If this is granted, and does it go with the property? If Mr. Prince decides to go buy his own building, does this CUP remain with the Bauer property?
I believe so, but only to that extent, but I am not 100% certain of that.
Jen?
So what you would potentially grant the conditional use permit for, that is what you are granting that for this automotive repair project.
Mr.
For this-
Prince?
Well, it would go with the property, so the use you're only approving for that scale of a use. If it were to change to a 40-car service bay, that would not apply. Because
But that stays with the property
Yes.
forever,
Yes.
no matter who's there?
As long as the business being operated is at the same scale or smaller, yes.
Great.
But if it was abandoned, it wouldn't last forever. If it's abandoned for a certain period of time,
Also true.
usually it's 1 or 2 years in most ordinances, then it would be lost.
Thank you.
Shep?
For Jen, in the scenario that the CUP is approved, does the language of the CUP need to be consistent with the presentation of by appointment only?
You could certainly do that.
Okay, I've
Well,
just,
the planning board usually approves as presented,
okay.
and that
Yeah.
would then tie your approval to this application and the details in it.
One way to do that even better, so there's notes on the plan, but also one of the exhibits we gave you is Scott and Nicole's summary of how they're going to operate their business. That could be appended as an exhibit to an approval, and then it's right there for anyone to see easily anytime.
I have one question on the parking. Mr. Prince says 1 to 3 customers a day. Does that include the snowplow customers or just the automotive repair and service?
I'll let him clarify if he wishes, but I think that's total. He can only work on one car at a time, so if he's got one plow and one other car to work on, that's what he'll do. But I don't think with, what's the plow's nearly a half a day, probably close to it, close to half a day for just putting on a plow.
There was something discussed at the zoning board, and I don't remember the context, but about the hours of the operation. Will the hours of operation be the same as the Bauer operation, whatever those hours are? I think there was some discussion at the zoning board that during the winter, when a snowplow breaks, they might want to come at, late at night to get it fixed, or how is that going to work?
I do recall vaguely some discussion about it, but this particular issue, I don't remember any decision or anything in the minutes, which I read today, about it. Rick wants to add something.
Yeah, so I was at the meeting, I wrote the minutes. So, yes, it was discussed. Some board members were wondering about putting on hours of operation. Other board members were against putting on hours of operation due to what you just stated, Ms. Monahan, about, well, if somebody has an emergency and needs to fix a snowplow in a storm or something, that hours of operation may, be a hindrance to that operation. So the zoning board decided not to add that as a condition.
Thank you, Rick. I had forgotten that.
Yep.
That is exactly how I remember it.
Jen?
Yeah, just for hours of operation, I would do that when you're dealing with any potential approval of the site plan, not the conditional use permit, though. I understand it, they're part and parcel, but
So we can do that.
you certainly could have hours of operation as part of a site plan approval.
Anyone else? Okay. So at 7:50, I will go ahead and open a public comment period on the conditional use application for the business in the Aquifer Protection District. Anyone who wishes to speak may come up to the podium.
Stop.
Going once, going twice. Seeing no one at 7:51, I will go ahead and close the public comment period on the CUP application. Comments, thoughts from members of the board?
Are we on comments on site plan, CUP, or both?
Well, we've accepted jurisdiction of both. You indicated earlier in this meeting you thought we should deal with the site plan first.
I do.
I actually, again, just my personal opinion, we should deal with the CUP first, because the site plan involves things due to the CUP, whether the CUP gets approved or denied, and then the site plan deals with other stuff. If we deal with the site plan first, and then depending upon what happens with the CUP, we may have to come back and deal with issues from the site plan. But that's just one person's opinion. I'm open to other opinions.
Well, one of the things I'm concerned about is this applicant, Mr. Bauer, in the site plan is asking us to approve those things that he did on the site plan that were not approved. One of those is that concrete pad where they wish to store the snowplows. I think it was 60 to 80 crates were discussed on that pad. I just think that you can't separate the two, and to do the CUP before the site plan is premature, but that's
That's
just my.
fine. I just,
And if you do the site plan first, I suggest a condition of approval that states that the CUP must be granted. Because you'd be approving a use on a site plan.
agree, that's
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, okay.
where I got.
Well, if they do the site plan first, and the site plan includes Mr. Prince's use, if they approve that site plan, then Mr. Prince's use is approved, but there's no cup approval for it. So then if they deny the cup, they would have an approval for a business and a denial for the business, unless they put in a condition that the cup must be approved. So that's why I suggested
Maybe
that.
I'm misunderstanding, but
I guess
certainly,
in the minority here.
I would think you could have I'm using the pad as an example, you could have a large pad, and however it's used is a different determination, however you want to do it, I just feel a little confused.
If you want to do
I'm
the
with
site
Ms.
plan-
Monahan that the cup should go first, in my opinion.
I just said one person's opinion.
I know, and that's why I'm just giving my one person's opinion.
Jen?
That's fine with me.
Just both, you have to have the conditional use permit and the site plan for the entire application to occur. Whichever way you wanna do it, doesn't matter, but both have to be approved for it to happen.
Yeah.
I think is effectively what Rick was saying.
Phil?
I was just gonna say that
Phil, you need to sit up so-
conditional use permit is to give a conditional permit, a permit with conditions to use the property in a certain way. That is to say, for an automotive service facility, as described in the application. That seems to me to be precedent for the site plan then, so I would say approve that. And then if the site plan requires any modifications because of that, I don't think it's gonna work the other way. I don't think modifications to the site plan would change whether or not we want an automotive or whatever they call it, a service facility there. So I don't remember who was in favor of that and who wasn't, because I was sitting here pondering the issue, but that's my opinion.
Your opinion is to do the cup first.
Yes.
What
Let's
did you
do the-
say, Rick?
I say cup first.
Let's do it. I'm not gonna, I mean, that's fine.
You want to
Okay.
poll everybody?
Huh? Go around it, yep. If you have an opinion, speak
All
up.
right, ladies before, well, not a gentleman, but.
You know, I don't know.
I prefer
mean-
a cup.
I mean, I don't see any
I'm
arguments,
fine.
strong
I'm
ones
not holding out
against
for, I just, fine.
Okay.
Especially like the glass ones that are filled with beer.
Okay, we'll deal with the cup. Discussion from members of the board relative to the cup?
I mean, for me, you know, I think I've already been quoted on the record from the attorney, but I don't believe that the existing use is altered in a way that makes me nervous about granting a cup for this application.
Phil?
I have a question for Jen. Jen, you said that we should have a condition for the cup if we approve the cup that says that best management practices will be used to handle all toxic or hazardous substances and chemicals. Should we cite New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services best management practices?
I do believe that, yes, that should be how you
I
have that
just want to
condition.
know who we
Yep.
should cite, because you could say best management practices, but they ought to be somebody's, so it's a clear reference. And I had another question too, what was it? Not a question, but a comment. It's left my mind, so maybe it'll return.
See?
Yeah, okay. I will just say this, that, excuse me, in order to grant the conditional use permit, the applicant has to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the planning board that no harm will come to the aquifer because of this proposed use. And I have a great deal of difficulty seeing how that condition can be met. Not because of Mr. Prince. I'm sure Mr. Prince, and sounds like he has a fine operation, but this site has never been once in compliance with a site plan. In 7 years, this site has never been in compliance with a site plan. And Mr. Prince has no authority over this site. He's a tenant, and the owner has the authority over how the building is used, how the trucks are unloaded, how best practices are used, and all that sort of thing. And we have a record of words not always matching the actions on this site. So I have some difficulty finding that this applicant, Mr. Bauer, can meet the standard of assuring this planning board that no harm will come to the aquifer. I understand the difference between a little bit of oil. Mr. Bauer's garage is very nice and neat and spotless, but the record is filled with statements that have been made 7 years ago, 5 years ago, last month, that are not the same as the actions. So I have concerns about that. I recognize that this board's authority only goes to whether this use will harm the aquifer. I have to say, I'm sorry that Shep ever said that thing, because that's going to be used forever, but we have no control over Route 1. And I understand that automotive service is a regular thing in Northampton, but we're talking about this site that has never been once in compliance. And so I am not going to vote for the conditional use permit, because I just can't square it with the fact that we've been told many things, and those who've been involved in this case since the beginning know what they are, the storage issues and the trucks and all those things. This is not like a shoe store on this site that's adding a automotive and service repair place. This is a construction yard with all kinds of things going on, and we're adding to that. So I just make my statement. I don't expect to be in the majority, but I will not be able to vote for this conditional use permit for those reasons.
Anyone else?
I
Bill?
recalled what I was going to say is the only real concern I have about the conditional use permit is that I think it's obvious that this property is being very intensely used. It is approaching that wonderful standard that we often talk about of trying to put 5 pounds of flour in a 3-pound bag. Sometimes we don't use the word flour. But with that said, I think I believe that the addition of this use to that property is, it is, as Mr. Phoenix, I have the kind of argument that Mr. Phoenix made is commonly referred to as the marginal cost argument, which has its problems, which I could illustrate by a funny story, but I won't bore everybody with a story that I probably think is funny, nobody else would. So I think that it is a marginal cost, including cost to the aquifer, cost to the disruption, as again, I think Mr. Phoenix pointed out, that you always have when you have commercial properties abutting residential properties. It frequently, we've had many, many instances of it on this board since I've been here, and it's a problem. But with that said, what I would say is I will propose some conditions on this conditional use permit, and if we agree to those conditions and the applicant agrees to them, then I'm satisfied that it is appropriate to permit this.
Okay. You've got that list of conditions. I'm not asking you to read it yet, because I want to see if anyone else has comments, but. Anyone else? Okay. Well, my comments on this are kind of a combination of what Phil and Nancy said. I've got a snowplow in the front of my pickup truck. I have a need for snowplows. We need a place to have them put on. We need a place to have them maintained and dealt with. And I agree that if what we hear tonight and if what is being presented to us is exactly what happens, I agree, it is a minimal increase in the use of the property. But I also recognize what Nancy says, that we have had a number of different site plans for this property that have been approved, and those site plans have, I'm not sure what the right word is, but time and time again, those site plans have not been followed. And basically, it appears that someone is doing what they wish, regardless of whether it's on the site plan or not. This includes storage sheds that were set in the wetland buffers. It's a fuel shed that wasn't put in an approved location, it was put in a residential district. It's the residential district that was cleared and used for material storage and a variety of material storages. The traffic pattern for the lot was not what was originally approved. The landscaping buffers are not what was originally approved, and something was just done differently. So, you know, if we had one of these incidences and a person who was not in the construction business and was not familiar with site plans, I'd look at it one way. But when we deal with a construction company, that it's their business to follow site plans on a normal routine course of business, and we find that we have numerous things that don't follow approved site plans, I really have concerns. And I really have concerns about what's going to be done in the future. So when, you know, again, nothing against putting snow plows on it, but I just have concerns with the way previous site plans have been treated and what's been done on the property. And I agree with Phil. We're trying to put 10 pounds in a 5-gallon bucket. We're trying to put 10 gallons in a 5-gallon bucket. And this is just a little bit more. It's not huge, but I have my concerns with what's been going on with this project and the number of site plans that we have had that have not been followed. So I will have difficulty in supporting this couple also. So that's my piece. Anyone else? Hearing nothing. Phil, did you want to make a motion with some conditions?
Okay, I'll move that we approve the conditional use permit for the operation of Prince Corner Garage on the site at 50 Lafayette Road in Northampton with the following conditions. That snow plows shall, and I emphasize the word shall, be stored only on the concrete slab as depicted on the site plan approved by the planning board on 3 May 2022. That's presuming that it will be approved, and I don't know whether I should, I suppose I should said, as depicted on the site plan, if approved by the planning board on 3 May 2022. Okay. Second, all toxic or hazardous substances and chemicals shall again be handled according to best management practices as provided by the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services for this type of business operation. Third, Prince Corner Garage shall consistently, and I emphasize shall, consistently operate according to the procedures specified as a part of the application process for this conditional use permit. I should say specified and provided, and I've got the nice list of how they're gonna conduct their business. So
Got it specified.
just refer to that,
And provided in the application?
and provided it's part of the application.
Yep.
That's it.
Do you have, is that pretty well written down there? May I grab a copy just in case? I also have it recorded, but,
I'll give you this piece of paper.
Yep.
at the end
Thank
of the
you.
meeting.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Lori.
Lori.
Any further discussion? Nancy?
On Phil's condition about the snowplows shall only be stored on the concrete pad at the zoning board, Mr. Bauer said he could store and would store 30 of those inside the building. Do we wish to preclude him from storing those inside the building?
I'll accept a friendly amendment that says only on the slab or inside the building. Thank you, Nancy.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed?
I have 4-2, Mr. Harned, Ms. Monahan opposed. The motion passes.
Okay. So moving on to the site plan itself. We've had the presentation, questions, comments from the board. We've had a public comment period with no comments made. But Nancy?
Regarding the issue of the things that are on the site now that were not approved on the previous site plan, I'm concerned about approving those simply for what I'm always concerned about, and that is precedent. If we approve a site plan and the owner of the property does what suits him and not what is on the site plan, and then comes and says, well, it's already done, so would you please approve it? To me, the site plan has no standing. Anybody could do anything on a site and hope that it is approved later. I mean, I think I understand why Mr. Bauer did some of these things, but the fact is that they were not approved, and he's now asking us after the fact just to approve them because that's what he wanted to do. And I worry about other people saying, well, if he could put something on his site and there was no problem, let's do that too on our site, and if they get us, we'll come and ask them to approve it after the fact. I think it diminishes the authority of the site plan and is not good precedent. It might sound trivial, but precedent is precedent.
I just, in my many years on the board, the only thing I have noticed is that we used to, and I don't know if you recall this, Phil, but we used to have as-built plans after the fact, and one of the things I have noted that in the construction process, there are often some shifts that happen during the construction process for various reasons, and that, even the best laid plans, I don't know if you've built a house or an addition, things change while you actually get involved into the project, and so that sometimes is what leads to changes. I don't know what the specific motivations were for Mr. Bauer to move things around, but and I also think, in fairness, that it was a challenging site because it was somewhat difficult to really understand exactly where IBR lines were, R1 lines are. That's not like they're painted on the ground out there. I don't know what he was totally aware of and not aware of as far as what was R1, what was IBR, because it is kind of a unique portion of Northampton where that line zigs and it zags and that sort of thing. But that said, I do think it's an unfair thing to just state right up front that I've almost seen, I don't think I've ever seen anything built on this board that looks exactly like the application and site plan. But that's just been my experience, and maybe that's a function of poor oversight by code enforcement and building inspections. I don't know, but I don't think it's completely unusual. So I don't know if I'm just stating that because I don't know if it means a precedent, because it's just so often been the case that I've seen these slight differences in what actually gets built from what's approved.
Slight is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've had houses built on other people's properties. I mean, we've run into that case. doing a
That
subdivision.
house built on, across the property line.
Yeah.
Right in the middle.
Other questions, comments? Phil?
I understand the concerns about setting a precedent, and nevertheless, I feel that I will vote in favor of this, again, if certain conditions, which I have made a list of, are included. And the reason, with respect to Nancy's concern, that I see this differently is that there have been several modifications to this site that were made without being approved on the site plan. And our aim, as I understand it, in getting this new site plan and getting it recorded and all the usual things, is that some of those will have been corrected. For example, the fuel shed being moved. And others, I think one that is corrected and by modifications is the inability for the fire trucks to go all the way around the building, and they have done that, and that's required an easement and stuff like that. But my point is that I think what this will do is what we will accomplish with this plan is correcting things that were done without approval, but also then acknowledging the things that were done without approval and saying, okay, we will accept these at this point. And I don't think that compels us to accept them in all future situations that might arise in this, unless they can show the same kind of conditions that we're seeing right here. I mean, we've come in, they've gone to the ZBA, they've gotten the variances they need, they've gotten the special exception, and one of the conditions that I'm going to suggest is that we approve this on condition that they provide a list of every modification that is different from the last approved site plan. And that, I believe, was 2015?
There was also an amendment in 2018.
18, from 2018. So
They need to go back and, because each one of those is a valid site plan.
yeah, so what I'm saying is I want to know what it is that was done without our approval that we're now approving. I want to make sure we have covered. I mean, I'm not talking about if there's 1 foot here or a foot there or something, but I mean the changes to the site. I am going to say that they need to specify on the plan the dimensions of this concrete pad.
You want to make an as-built plan, a requirement, a condition?
If that's the pleasure of the board.
So, okay, you're all set, Phil, with your comment?
That's my only comment.
Anyone else?
I just had one other question for the applicant. I don't know if the individual, Scott Prince, wants to answer this question or not, but I just wanted to ask him a little bit about his extensive experience at the Lang Corner garage, because I think it's pertinent in this case for a number of reasons. And one is, Scott, hi, Chaperone.
Scott Prince.
How would you characterize the former Lang Corner garage as far as its environment goes, where it is situated in respect to residential uses?
It was neat, tidy, for the most part quiet. You know, never really had any complaints.
Would you describe it as operating fairly harmoniously within the dense neighborhood that it was in?
Yeah, I would say that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Okay, I guess it's my turn again. I'm pretty much going to do what I did last time, and that is repeat Nancy's comments and some of Phil's. I absolutely have concern about setting the precedent of an applicant getting a site plan approved and then doing a variety of different things that are not on that site plan and then trying to get them approved after the fact. I think our job is made a lot easier because several of the things that did not go according to the site plan, that is the storage area in R1, that's the fuel shed, that was denied at the ZBA, so we didn't have to deal with those issues. And I think if the ZBA had approved those, we'd have a much more difficult situation to deal with. But I really do not like the idea of people coming in with site plans, and yep, Shep, I grew up in the construction business. The house doesn't always end up exactly where you started out. Things get changed a little bit. But I don't put these changes in that category of small things. Someone who builds a house across the property line, that's a major screw-up, if they did it by accident, which I suspect was done in that case. Somebody just didn't know what they were doing. But when you start going into whole R1 area, or residential areas and using it for a business use, that's not a small mistake. In terms of knowing where the difference is between the IBR and the R1, that's what we pay the surveyors big bucks for. They know where that line is, and they can put stakes in the ground and flag it. So I really have problems with multiple changes to a site plan where somebody then comes back and just tries to get all of those changes approved after the fact because it was done. I'm glad the ZBA made some of the decisions they did because it made our situation a little bit easier. But I most definitely have concerns with that process. So, my 2 cents worth. Anything from anyone else? Does somebody want to make? Jen?
I've just got a couple suggestions for conditions that we haven't already discussed.
Go ahead.
One being that the snow storage location be located in an area outside of the wetland buffer district and not impeding traffic flow and parking on the site.
Okay.
If you guys wanted to do hours of operation limitations, that wasn't quite I don't know if it was a settled discussion. That the conditional use permit be listed on the recorded page along with the date granted and any conditions. The equitable waiver being noted on the recorded plan. And then the other two are the as-built plan, if that's a condition that you choose to have, and the list of all modifications from this plan from all former approvals based on the original approval, which is recorded as Plan D-39030. That was the original Bauer approval. D.
So wait, slow down, Jen, please, just slow down for a second. So, which one?
So Plan D-39030.
Is that the 2015?
It's the original
It's the original,
2015.
yeah, that's the 2015 one.
Right.
So you want, because we've got 3 of them that have been registered, right,
Yes.
Rick?
To my knowledge, yes.
So I thought Phil was talking about a list of differences back to the last one.
If you only want back to the 2018 recording, that would be a different reference. If you wanted difference from all 3,
I would suggest all 3 because there are things on 2018 that were left off because it was only, it had a focus to it of the duplex. So it was very focused to the duplex, and a lot of the other items from the earlier things are not incorporated, in my opinion. So, but yet those earlier plans are still valid because they have requirements and they have things incorporated on them, which the 2018 plan must still adhere to. So I think all 3 might be a better option.
I think all 3 is an excellent, because when I reviewed this, I struggled with the position we were gonna put the building inspector in if he had to go onto the property, and he has 3 recorded plans, and the latter ones only address portions of the lot. So how is he going to piece that all together? So Phil, I think one of the conditions of approval is we should get a complete list of changes from the first recorded site plan to the second, from the second to the third, and Yeah, first to second, second to third, third to fourth. So that the future building inspector has something that he can look at and know what's being changed at each one of these approvals. Make sense?
Do we know the dates of each of those? We got 16 and 18. So
Yeah, well,
So the
we have,
recording,
we have the recording plan numbers.
the recording plan is D 39030.
And the next one is D 39134, and the next one is D 4650.
I must have given you those numbers.
So,
Nice try, dude.
Oh,
I've been known to do my homework. I'm sorry, Nancy, what?
Phil made a motion on the cup, and we're now talking about,
We're now talking about Phil made a motion on the cup, we voted on the cup, it was approved. Now we're talking about the site plan.
okay.
What is the reference number for the first site plan? D,
I think they have. it.
D 39030.
39030.
3-0.
39030. Okay, got it right.
You want
Okay.
the second and third ones?
Well, the way I was thinking of,
Okay.
if you're gonna ask me to make this motion, the way I was gonna state this condition is that applicant shall submit a sequential list of all modifications on this site that have been made since the approval of the site plan recorded at 93930,
That works.
or recorded at or as, I mean, that's not the book. and
Recorded
tape.
at the Rockingham Registry of Deeds would be the, I think the applicant has a comment.
Just a question for clarification, so I know what you want to see. I'm looking at a note that will go on the site plan to be recorded that would say initial approval, such and such, modifications thereto.
Looking for a list of the modifications from the first approved plan, which was the 39303, the list of modifications from the first plan to the second plan. Then we want a second list of modifications from the second plan to the third, and then we want another list of modifications from the third to the final one that we're approving, or
That-
possibly approving tonight.
That were never approved.
Huh?
I thought the statement was that were not a list of approved modifications, but a list of items that were done without a site plan approval.
I'm thinking it should be all modification.
Okay.
It should be both, I'm sorry.
See, what I was thinking of, as simple-minded as I am, pretending that Mr. Shagnon has the site plan recorded at the Rockingham Register of Deeds as 93930 on the wall here, and the one that we're supposed to be reviewing tonight here, and he goes through and says, well, this is different, this is different, this is different, this is different, and then makes a little spreadsheet out of that, and then over here says, approved on such and such a date, which might cite some of the other site plans, or the last date would be approved at this site plan approval, which would imply it had never been approved before.
That's a reasonable way of doing it. I just want something the building inspector can backtrack
I've got it,
through.
and I can work with
And
you on
look at the
that.
different plans and know what the heck he's looking at. And what is this plan
Well,
showing?
I'm trying to get him to the point where he can look at the last
Yeah.
column of my thing and say, okay,
Yeah.
this thing that I'm seeing on the site now is fine.
Yeah, no, you're gonna,
Or this one doesn't show up, so how'd it get here?
yeah, no, I think with his last one, all the changes, which site plan they're referenced on.
Right. And if it's this one, we note that it was this one.
Yeah.
Yep. Mr. Shagnon has another question, Mr. Chair.
Just for clarification, that's a document for the building inspector, or that's something you want to see on the recording
I
plan?
want to see it on a recorded plan.
I want to see it as a spreadsheet, as a note on the plan.
It's stated that way, so I want to be sure.
You can do that.
People can't hear.
Yeah, we can put it.
Future questions, please go to the mic. Jen?
I'm just wondering if this spreadsheet might be a little cumbersome for the actual site plan. No?
That's my concern as well.
Whether that could be, if it doesn't fit, it can be a separate page that's just recorded and referenced on the plan.
It may be recorded as a document, but the
Yeah.
registry won't record it as a separate
Well, yeah,
plan,
that's
per
what I
se.
mean.
Yeah.
Just a document,
Yep.
if it won't fit.
We can make it work. You can
I'm
embed a
seeing
spreadsheet.
right here, right, which has only 2 columns, and I think I was suggesting 4 columns. And I think Mr. Shagnon knows how to expand a spreadsheet from 2 columns to 4 columns. And that one appears to be on a site plan, so it seems to be good old existence proof of it's called if P, then P is possible.
Okay. Got it.
Now, what the Register of Deeds will do with it is a totally different issue.
And we'll work through that. Thank you.
So what are we doing about the snow storage?
So my suggestion was that the snow storage be relocated to an area outside of the wetland buffer district and not impede traffic flow and parking on the site.
Does such an area exist? Is that snow storage area sufficient?
It appears there is space in a couple potential locations.
I mean, from a practical standpoint, the only places I see that would be effective for them or anyone to move snow around in a location would be in the, and I'm just thinking through how a plow has to work through a space, would be I'm just trying to figure out where I am on this plan, on the south corner.
Southwest corner.
I don't know if that works for them. but-
It also looks like some snow storage might be accommodated between the 2 parking areas. He's got trailer parking area on the southerly border of the, I guess that's a detention pond. And the trailer parking area on the southeasterly border of it. That, I don't think that would accommodate everything from the site. I think you'd also have to say on that southwesterly quarter that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to find a place that would accommodate movement of emergency vehicles.
Shep, you don't have to engineer it for them, that's their job.
Well, I know, but I think we should have an idea before we create a condition as to where they're gonna address that.
So the site was designed with a sedimentation basin. That is the round feature, and that is a suitable place for the snow to go because any particulate matter in the snow is going to be captured, not released into the wetland. So,
Are you talking about the
Can
big?
you speak into the microphone, John? I can't-
sure. The round feature is a sedimentation basin, and the purpose of that in the design is to settle out particles before the drainage is exited into the wetland buffer. So that's a suitable place for snow storage.
It will be treated before it goes through those drainage pipes?
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's a sedimentation basin.
John, is
This-
that on C3 in the site plan detail, is that the sedimentation storage, is that?
It has,
That's within the
on
wetland.
C3, it has a,
It's within the wetland buffer.
It was designed and approved in the wetland buffer. Sorry. It was designed and approved in the wetland buffer as the treatment for the stormwater for the site. The board approved a conditional use permit as part of the original approvals to create that area.
But wasn't approved for snow storage.
This plan is not a whole lot different than the original plan. I'd have to go back and look.
The snow storage, at least in the 2015 amended plan, was sort of in between the parking and the detention basin. It was partially within the wetland buffer.
And the parking spaces weren't delineated on that.
Correct.
So where we've shown it on this plan, it just happens to be where there are some parking spots shown, correct?
Yes.
And you're saying that we shouldn't show it there because they're parking spots.
My primary concern is that it's in the wetland buffer for the snow storage.
Well, it was originally approved to be, because it's gonna drain into that treatment device.
I don't feel obligated to do all the engineering, so.
Well, I think Mr. Croner said, if we work it out now, then we don't have to, if everybody understands where we're gonna put it on the plan, that's a good thing. 'Cause
Yeah, because then you're leaving
we're
it
getting
up,
our approval tonight.
you're
so-
leaving it up to administration to say, yeah, it's okay, as opposed to the planning board saying, yeah, it's okay there.
That's my point.
Yeah. And administration will most likely say, yeah, I'm good with it.
I mean, a part of the condition of the plan could be dictated that it's outside the wetland buffer, and if that condition is met, administration can check the box. Or we can say we want the snow storage moved to that south corner, because that's one spot that I think they could store snow and wouldn't impact their movement around the.
Well, what you said, Shep, originally was the southwest corner.
Yeah.
I mean, in the plans up through the one that was approved in June, the 40650 plan, which was the third one that was approved, I believe it still shows that southwest corner was just not supposed to be parking area or anything.
Yep.
So does the area in between the concrete slab and the detention basin make
Excuse me?
sense? Does the area in between the detention basin and the concrete slab, it still allows access to the fuel storage, it still allows access to all the parking spaces, it's outside of the wetland buffer?
I'm good with that.
It doesn't let you drive around the
Jenny, you talking about at the end of the pad?
I'm talking about this vicinity.
You're gonna put snow here, how are you gonna get around the building? It's not gonna work. Absolutely not.
I'm also not an engineer.
May I suggest that, I mean, I hate to do this, but that Mr. Shagnon and come back next month with the final drawing of where the snow storage is gonna be. I know you don't wanna have to come to another meeting, but this is getting a little more difficult than.
I don't see an issue with where it's shown on sheet C2. It's shown in a location that was previously approved.
Am I misunderstanding? Didn't you say that what he's showing on the plan is in the wetland buffer?
What he's showing on the plan is within the wetland buffer. The 2015 plan does show some snow storage within the buffer. It also shows additional snow storage outside of the buffer.
Which this does do technically too.
So,
But it also doesn't show it being on a parking area. So they currently have the snow storage on parking areas for the site.
correct. So we currently have 3 additional spaces. 30 where 27 is required. So if we leave the snow storage over 3 of the spaces, and I guess it has to So we show snow storage here, but only for 3 spaces, and then we put additional snow storage in this corner, which will still allow driving around. Is that acceptable?
I would think here, and some, here you could still get around, but I don't know whether there's enough here, and I mean,
Looks like it.
I'm not the world's greatest snowplow operator. I use a snow thrower. That way I don't have to worry about where I plow it, but, hey, it's a pretty big one, it's 60 inches across. But it would seem to me that, to disagree with the owner of the property a little bit, which is probably not a wise thing to do since he knows it far better than I, but it seems to me that there is some room for snow storage in that corner of that corner of the detention, or you call it sedimentation pond. And I understand you can't pile it up so it's out there and blocks all travel around it, but it looks like there would be some possibility there. And then in addition to that, I mean, when I'm trying to move snow, if I were trying to move snow in front of this building, I wouldn't want to have to move it all the way to the back. So, and I don't see why in that southwesterly corner, there isn't some use of that for snow storage. Am I missing something?
Are you saying here, or
Right, you
Yeah.
mentioned that.
here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we show here, snow storage here, which is a good place, because you can still drive around, and then we narrow this down to the 3 spaces, and then
That's still in the wetland buffer, John.
it was approved in the wetland buffer previously.
We
The-
make
the
mistakes
site
like everybody
drains.
else.
Well, the site drains to the treatment area. It drains to the treatment device.
Yeah? Well,
The
so
treatment
is-
device is in the wetland buffer. So you're draining the snow as it melts to a treatment device. It's
Oh.
not,
That's what the sedimentation pond is for. Oh, gee, that's the first time I ever heard that, John. I'm sure you assured us that the detention pond would work for that purpose the first time we approved it. I don't remember that, but I know how thorough you are and how bright you are, and I know you must have done that, right? So I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying, why don't you move the storage off of those parking places and move it over a little bit? And if you use this corner down here, then you've probably got enough space back there, and you won't have anything in the wetland buffer. I'll tell you right now, I'll vote against approving the site plan if you don't get the snow out of the wetland buffer. And I think there's some other people on the board that probably agree with that. So, go ahead, you argue whatever you want, and you know where my vote's going.
so, go ahead. Yeah. So you will move the snow storage out of the buffer to here, correct?
Yeah?
That's it, done.
And you don't need to use the parking spaces.
All of it's
Correct.
gonna go, are you
Correct.
basically saying now, all snow storage will be in that southwest corner? Is that what you're saying?
Okay, I'm sorry, that's the southeast corner.
Southeast.
I think you keep saying southwest,
Saying
so
southwest,
I'm
but southeast.
thinking you mean over here.
That's on me.
Yes, I think you could put it here and along here,
Well,
push
that's
it up.
gonna impede the movement around the building, isn't it? I'm trying to find a way to keep it from impeding the movement around the building.
Yes,
So that's why I was saying if you split it to that southeast corner and also the southeast corner of the open area between the 2 trailer park areas, that on the side of the detention pond, it's still gonna melt and drain into the detention
Yeah,
pond.
right there.
Yeah, just
So we'll
not
move it
not
to
enough
right
to
here.
impede movement around the building.
right here, snow storage, and right here, snow
Yeah.
storage.
Now, will
Done.
that give you adequate space to do it?
I think so.
Yes.
I would think so. I mean,
And remove it from the parking spaces where it is now shown.
Right.
Yep, thank you.
Any other issues? Phil, are you gonna make a motion?
at your pleasure, Mr. Chairman.
My pleasure, go for it.
Okay, I move that we approve the site plan for 50 Lafayette Road on conditions that, and Rick, at the end, you'll add whatever of our usual conditions apply, right?
Yes, I will, and if you want me to read them at the end, I will.
Okay, the first condition that I would suggest is the one I mentioned before, that I'll modify it a little bit. A spreadsheet listing, providing a sequential list of all modifications that have been made to this site since approval of the site plan recorded as D 39030 at the Rockingham Registry of Deeds. Including specific references to when the modifications were approved. That would be on which site plan they were approved. That's what I mean by sequential, by the way. Seconded, the dimensions of the concrete pad shall either be noted on the plan or noted in a site, or in a note to the plan. 3, a note shall be added to the plan specifying stating that the location of the fuel shed was approved by the building inspector as affirmed by the town planning and zoning administrator in the public hearing on May 3rd about this site plan. Next. I was going to say something about hours of operation. Do we want to specify hours of operation?
Well, it seems like there's a number of neighbors who have issues with activity and noise and all, and given the history of things don't always turn out the way that were first agreed to, it would be concerning if, for example, they decide to work 4 evenings out of the week. I feel, I understand also though snowplows break down emergencies, and so I don't know how you handle that.
Yeah,
But
well,
I'm a little uncomfortable with not specifying hours of operations, given history.
Okay, so what I would suggest is that the condition be normal hours of operation shall be from 7 to 6?
That's what I was gonna suggest.
7 to 6? Going once? No? Greg shaking his head? What?
We're gonna run a plow business.
Well, I'm not finished yet, Greg.
Okay.
I'm gonna say, I said normal hours of operation. Exceptions shall be made for emergency situations related to the type of business operation. Okay?
What does that mean? Who just, I'm with Valerie. I think this is a very difficult one because obviously this neighborhood has been highly impacted by the activity at this site. And I understand Mr. Prince probably has to repair snowplows at 11 o'clock at night for somebody who has to start plowing snow at midnight. So how do we?
Yeah, I think the question is how to do it. Do we want to be specific? Are the emergency situations just going to be with snowplows? You know, then we could say specifically in the winter, snowplow operation emergency outside of normal business hours. Is that the only example of where you would need emergency service outside normal hours? Is a snowplow breaking down situation in a storm?
I totally agree with that, but I also own an excavation
Go to the
business.
microphone, Mr.
Yeah,
Prince.
we can't hear you too
I
well.
agree with what she's saying about the emergency repairs, but I own an excavation business, and sometimes there's water main breaks for towns, town of Rye, town of Northampton, and Hampton. So sometimes we get called out in the middle of the night to fix water main breaks. Or if we get a big snow and I need to move a load to downtown Portsmouth, I'm gonna drive from my house down to the shop and grab the loader and go to work. That's seasonal stuff, you know, in the winter, you don't know what's gonna happen. And somebody's out plowing all night long and they're broke down at 3 o'clock in the morning, they gotta come back to the shop to get a leaky piston or something fixed.
That we understand, yeah. Yeah,
That's-
that was clear,
Mr.
yeah.
Prince, could you give us some idea of how often this happens? Is it once every winter that there's an emergency at midnight, or is it, every week you have 5 of these, or what, how does it work?
I mean, I can't put a number on it. I mean, I can't say that it happens all the time. But, I mean, it varies from storm to storm, if it's heavy wet snow, if it's light fluffy snow, how much snow we get.
So, can you just make an estimate? Is it once a week, once a day, once a winter?
It's all pendant on the weather. I mean, typically, it's only during a snowstorm.
So that year we had those nor'easters every Friday?
Yep,
That was a bad one, huh?
yep, it was.
Do you have ideas about how this is handled in similar
Well, so
situations?
you could have, for Mr. Prince's operation specifically, you could have the hours be limited to, I think you said 7 to 6, Phil, with regular hours, with occasional servicing during non-regular hours for emergency situations during winter storm events. You could also have a separate set of hours operation for Mr. Bauer's portion of the use.
And how would these comport with the town's new noise ordinance that prohibits construction activity? I don't know what the hours are, before 7 and after, I don't know, maybe it's 9 o'clock, I'm not sure.
Well, I will say that Mr. Bauer is not doing construction
On
on
his
his site. It's not that's not an approved use on that site. He's storing things, he's repairing his own vehicles, he's got materials, but it's not construction.
He's like fetching things, right, to go off and do work elsewhere?
Yeah, we don't do any site work
Right.
or any excavation at all on my property.
Perhaps I said the wrong word. I think it's, any noise related to commercial activity, I think. I'm not sure. I don't have a copy of the noise ordinance. I'm just asking, so we don't get in trouble down the road with the noise ordinance.
I think the noise ordinance is 7 to 7.
Yeah, it's 7 to
7 to 7?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know, Lori, how it
just-
defines the,
No, it just says any construction noise or other noise, 7 to 7.
I guess
Are
my
you
su-
pulling
my
it up, Rick?
suggestion is
I'm
to
gonna
have
try,
two
yeah.
separate hours of
Trying to
operation.
find out where they,
Yeah, I think there's 2 distinctions here. I also can, and I don't have the facts unfortunately, but we have another similar business, also situated in a residential zone via a variance, much older, called Abenaki Carriers. And so they operate trucks all the time. I'm pretty sure. I even think they have maintenance that happens as well across many hours. So I think it's just in the wording, there's the distinction of his operations for his by appointment car repair business, which can have some standard hours that are fairly normal and that you would expect. And then you have Mr. Bauer's business, which, is gonna have exceptions because he just indicated the fact that he's called upon to deal with emergencies. So I think it is, I think it's
Both
complicated.
businesses are called upon to
Yeah, to some degree.
cope with emergencies. I mean, you might say that Prince's garage is largely during snow events, but a burst water main can occur anytime.
Yeah.
And what I was trying to do is, the only thing I can think of is to say to be reasonable about this. I mean, if you're running a business like this, it's a service to the community to be able to operate under emergency situations, and I'm sure that the neighbors who are, I would assume, are reasonable people would understand that. What we're trying to do is keep the quote-unquote nuisance noise from these kinds of operations from being a constant or even a terribly frequent problem for the neighbors. And I know we're talking about distinguishing between two businesses that have although they're quite different businesses, they have similar issues with respect to the noise because of the emergency situation. But I feel like we're getting to the point where I'm gonna have to cite one of my favorite rules of thumb. If you have to write down all the rules, you've already lost the game. You have to assume at some point people are reasonable. And if you say only, except under emergency situations, and the neighbors complain, and the police go out and say, hey, you're violating the noise ordinance, and Greg says, well, wait a minute, Portsmouth just called me to get a front-end loader down there so that they can do A, B, or C, and I had to get this out of the garage, the police are gonna say, yeah, that's fine, and maybe talk to the neighbors or answer them or whatever. If they go down there and Greg has a poker game going on and the guys are out playing with his trucks, that might be a different situation.
Rick, have you found the noise ordinance?
No, I haven't. I'm trying to figure out where they might have put it, but I can't find it.
We stalled for you as long as we can, Rick.
I apologize. I found the mosquito control ordinance.
Well,
I think we should just let the noise ordinance deal with it.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
so for hours of operation, are we gonna say 7 to 6 on the site? We're gonna say 7 to 6 for Prince Garage, corner garage, or are we gonna say 7 to 7, or what are we gonna say?
Say 7 to 6 for both.
Okay, on this site.
7 to 7.
You wanted 7 to 6.
7 to 7 would be in comport with the noise ordinance.
7 to 7, at least be consistent. I think we should at least be consistent with the noise ordinance.
Okay,
So I have the noise ordinance. up.
Yay, good for you.
It's between 9 PM and 7 AM. Noise created by loading, unloading, opening, closing, or otherwise handling boxes, containers, materials. And prohibited between 9 PM and 7 AM, noise created by the operation or use of construction, demolition vehicles, including but not limited to bulldozers, graders, dump trucks, backhoes, etc.
so they're saying the hours of operation are 7 AM to 9 PM.
9 to 7.
That's, 9 to 7 is when the ordinance
It's
is in effect.
prohibited.
9 PM to 7
Sorry.
AM is when the noise ordinance, you have to flip your,
What do they talk about emergency situations? I don't remember.
Exemptions, noise for safety resulting from authorized vehicles, noise resulting from emergency maintenance work performed by the town, by the state or public utility companies, snow removal, any other noise resulting from activities of temporary duration permitted by law and for which the license or permit has been granted by the town. So I think that under that, your site plan approval would fit under that as an exception. And snow blowers and other types of snow removal operations are exemptions.
so should we state the condition of approval as operations on the site shall comply with the town's noise ordinance except in instances where emergency services require operations outside of the normal hours?
But then you're saying the business operation can be from 7 to 9 at night. Noise
I-
of running the business can go that long?
Well, that's, I thought we were aiming at trying to be consistent with this noise ordinance.
Well, that was a suggestion made, but I mean, are there other businesses that
That's
are
what we
just allowed to go on and operate until 9? I mean, clearly restaurants, but I mean, there are other businesses that can be operating and making noise till 9?
If this ordinance says they can, they can.
The noise ordinance says.
Yeah.
I mean,
So the noise defines everything, so all businesses can stay open till 9. We never, ever say in our site plans what the hours of operation should be?
You can absolutely restrict hours of operation per a site plan approval.
I think we should go back to
I
7
mean,
to
I've sat
7, which is
here
what we thought the
seen
noise.
that.
9 is pretty late. I mean, do you really operate up till 9 o'clock on a regular
Sometimes you have
basis?
to, when there's other businesses in this town that are affiliated with this type of work that do work till 9 at night. I have one behind my house that does. He's in the mulch business and the tree business. And he's out there making mulch till late at night. So 9 at night is the deadline, and 7 in the morning is the start. And that's what we want.
It's longer every time it's the director.
And it's wisdom the town has adopted. I mean, the purpose of restricting hours of operation is to, primarily to restrict noise, nuisance noise, right?
Yeah.
And the town in its infinite wisdom has adopted a noise ordinance. And I think it's wise to be consistent across the board. I mean, why should we?
Mr. Prince, what are your hours currently? I think there's some, wasn't it,
Currently, I work for Greg from 7 to 3:30.
oh, I thought you had your business over there already.
No.
No. What were the, doesn't your business plan state some hours?
It just says
7
by
to 6
appointment,
or something like that?
just says by appointment only.
It didn't have a state, the hours listed?
No.
No.
I mean, normal hours of operation under circumstances where it's by appointment only would mean the hours in which you would make appointments.
Right.
Again, except under emergency conditions.
I would say consistent with the noise ordinance.
Does that set a precedent that we can never be involved in setting hours for any business ever in Northampton?
Because we've set hours for restaurants and other things that.
Well, well, that's later, yeah, but are there other examples of things that don't go on to 9 o'clock at night that we've set for one reason or another?
Shaw's is open till 10.
But they don't make any noise. It's just-
That's not the example I'm looking for. I'm just trying to see, we're always concerned about precedent, and it seems like it negates our ability, except to extend beyond 9, it negates our ability.
No, it doesn't negate anything. You have the right to establish anything for any application.
Okay,
It's just that this board is choosing, or some members of this board are at this choosing to choose what the select board has adopted. But that doesn't mean you have to do that every time.
okay. Is there anything else besides noise that we would want to think about in this case? It's a business district up against residential, and there's residents unhappy with all the commotion. Yes, I do know they chose to live next to Route 1. But is there any other reason besides noise? I mean, vehicles traveling in and out, or anything else?
The other thing that could occur late at night would be lighting.
Okay, there's
But
another
that's,
thing.
I think that was brought up in past letters.
Yeah,
but-
I'm just trying to think thoroughly
Well,
about
there's
it.
dust and vibration are the other two that are typical in this kind of provision. I don't know, Jane, can you think of some more?
That's primary, headlights are often the primary culprit besides noise.
Okay,
So,
so I'm not saying those are compelling reasons to change, to set hours, but do we need to discuss whether any of those are something to consider, or is it just go with the noise ordinance?
I have to say, we have a smoldering situation here with a construction yard that's overcrowded with a lot of machinery that the neighbors have consistently complained about for 7 years. Now, I don't think that we are paying enough attention to the issue of the disruption of the neighborhood, so that somebody can extend their noisy business until 9 o'clock at night. I just think that we ought to give a little more consideration to the location, the denseness of this, the use on this site, the number of trucks that are coming in. I can envision a truck coming at 9 o'clock at night to unload the snowplows. I mean, there's just so much going on this site that I think we're not paying enough attention to the neighbors' noise concerns, and that's one of our duties. That's just me.
And yeah, and I think it's not just the noise, it may be the lights, you know, somebody's in their living room and there's headlights going in. I don't, right now, I'm not seeing in my mind exactly how close everything is.
I haven't heard
but-
on this one, it's headlights, but it's
Well, you said
noise, it's
sometimes
moving
that's a complaint.
equipment, it's moving.
So what would you like to do? Let's,
I'd like to set hours less than 9 o'clock, other than emergencies, and I
I
understand.
suggest somebody make a motion to set the hours at, and let's vote on it and decide. Because I think we can
Do
go
you
back
want me
and
to have
forth
what
and
I
never.
have written?
exactly.
She's.
Excuse me, Jen?
Do you want me to have what I have written?
Uh,
Please.
Point of order? Can we make a motion in the middle of
We
making
have
a
a, yeah,
motion?
we have a motion in progress.
What we're talking about is amending
Your
the
motion.
condition of approval that I was proposing, which is part of a motion, and that's perfectly in
Thank
order.
Thank you.
Well, do you want to?
You want to get technical about it?
No, I just want to make sure we're doing it the right way.
Finish your conditions, and then we can have a motion to amend one or more of them?
No,
We-
why don't we do this one while it's fresh in our mind?
Okay.
Yep.
What did Jen want to do?
Well, this is just what I have written down. Regular hours of operation for the Prince facility shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. with occasional servicing during non-regular hours for emergency situations during winter storm events. The Millie Bauer LLC regular hours of operation shall be limited to 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. with occasional servicing for emergency situations.
Is everybody happy with that?
I'm good with that.
We don't
Happy
have
with
to
that.
vote.
I mean, I feel like it gives the neighborhood, you know, they can have their dinner and have some peace. You know, they can get a little bit of the evening and have some peace. But, you know, obviously, the emergencies, things they have to do
Question,
is allowed, you know, they need to do it
were,
when they come up.
when we the original, or the amended, whichever, was there ever any conversation about?
I'm not sure if there was conversation, I don't see anything,
there was nothing.
any plans or anything like that.
Our role, the reason we're called a quasi-judicial board is because we have to make judgments. And this is a judgment of balancing the rights or interests of property owners in the residential district who bought properties that abut the IBR with full knowledge they were buying properties that abut the IBR and whatever consequence that may or may not mean. I understand fully that people don't usually imagine what it can mean when it becomes accepted. On the other hand, you've also got the interests and the rights of the person who owns it in the IBR. Our role is to balance those. We can't say, we gotta protect the interests of the residential district at all costs.
No.
But we also can't say businesses can just do whatever they damn well please, right? So the question we have is, what's the appropriate balance? I hear a proposal 7 to 6. Is that the sense of the board?
I think that's appropriate.
Okay, so we'll body that in the, you can use Jen's language. I don't see the reason to distinguish between Millie, or the Bauer operation, whatever, what did you
Right.
call it? The
Millie
little-
Bauer LLC in Prince Quarter.
And the Prince's Garage, just say on this site.
Lot
the-
8024.
Normal hours of operation will be 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. except in circumstances which require emergency service by any business on the lot. Does that get it?
That's fine.
So I'm going with Phil's exact language. Thank you.
And I didn't write that down, so,
I'm recording and,
okay.
yep, but I appreciate
Are we
that.
including the emergency?
I said,
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
and then,
Forget the
the
word
applicant shall provide an as-built plan when construction on the site is, and modifications to the site, according to the approved plan, have been completed. Snow storage shall be located outside the wetlands buffer. We've talked about how you're going to accomplish that, so I'm not going to specify it in the condition.
But the plan will show it.
But the plan will show it, correct. And a note shall be added to the plan indicating that the equitable waiver application was approved by the Zoning Board of Adjustment on That's my list, and unless somebody's got other one.
Just the conditional use permit and any conditions be
Oh,
listed.
yes. Rob, can you add that?
Cup language included on the plan.
There's also the equitable waiver.
You mentioned that.
Yeah, he just,
That's
yeah.
Can't afford to pondering.
Equitable waiver, special exception, cup.
Yeah, all permits or approvals that have been
Right,
secured for this plan.
correct.
And then we want the recordable Mylar.
Yep, I can read those real quick. Applicant shall submit a recordable Mylar of the approved plan with signatures and seals affixed of all licensed professionals whose names appear on the plan. All conditions of approval shall be listed on the Mylar pursuant to NHRSA 676:3, Roman numeral 3. Applicant shall submit a certificate of monumentation stamped and signed by a New Hampshire licensed surveyor, certifying all monuments depicted on the plan have been properly set. Applicant shall submit evidence of receipt of all required federal, state, and local permits, including but not limited to NHDOT driveway and NHDES subsurface system approvals, and shall note their numbers as appropriate on the recorded page of the plan. Applicant shall submit checks made payable to the Rockingham County Registry of Deeds for required L-chip and recording fees. All fees incurred by the planning board, including but not limited to consulting, engineering, and legal fees have been paid by the applicant. There shall be no changes to the approved site plan on a recordable Mylar except to meet these conditions of approval. No performance guarantee is applicable in this case.
Okay, we have a motion with conditions. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Valerie. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Those opposed?
4-2, Mr. Harn and Ms. Monahan opposed.
Okay.
Slide that over to Rick. I don't know whether you could read that or not. but
Yeah,
you
no,
can-
that's fine. I just want to have it as a backup to everything else. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our first case of new business. This is case,
Mr. Wilson,
yes.
are we? And,
You could read it before you.
That's what I was gonna do.
oh, okay, I just didn't know if we could proceed.
Mr. Wilson has stepped away for a moment, so we will continue on with our first case of new business. This is case 2205. The applicant is Sundance Sign Company, 89 Oak Street, Dover, New Hampshire. The applicant requests a conditional use permit to allow 2 wall signs, both approximately 70 to 71 square feet in size, on the retail sales building at 33 Lafayette Road. The property owner is WS Northampton Properties, OP LLC, 33 Boylston Street, Suite 3000, Chestnut Hill, Mass. The property location is 33 Lafayette Road, Northampton, New Hampshire. The map and lot number is 007-052-000. The zoning district is the IBR Industrial Business Residential District. And if you could just hold until Mr. Wilson returns.
Also, I just want to, since we're waiting, make the chair aware of the 9:30 provision. We may need to take a vote to move past 9:30 at some point.
Yep, we will.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, please identify yourself, and the floor is yours.
How are you? Thank you, board, for meeting. My name is Chris Mulcahy. I'm from Sundance Sign up in Dover, New Hampshire.
Could you speak up just a little bit? Those microphones are only for the TV.
My name is Chris Mulcahy. I'm here from Sundance Sign, representing Mill 77, which is moving into that 35 Lafayette Road, which is the old Staples building, kind of in the Lafayette Crossing Plaza area. They're not part of the plaza, separate property, but kind of in that circle. So currently, the square footage in that zone is 24 square feet is allowed for a wall sign. Due to the size of the building and kind of the location of the building, we're trying to increase that size to 70 on both the main entrance, and then there's a wall on Lafayette that faces, and it would be the identical signs. It's kind of identically the same space. I believe Staples used that whole space too. I don't know the exact square footage. I'm guessing they were about 100 square feet. They're bigger than what we're kind of proposing. Kind of the reason for a larger sign in that spot is that as you're coming down Lafayette, they don't have any signage facing that side. They're not attached to the Lafayette Crossing Plaza, so they don't have a tenant panel on the pylon sign. There's different property owners. I don't know if you guys have the bullet points on the waiver request form. If you want me to go over any of that, I can.
So why don't you briefly go over it?
Sure. So the existing signs have dark sky compliant lighting. There's about 5 gooseneck lights on each wall that face down. Our sign itself is not lit. It's a high density urethane. We call it sign foam. It's going to be painted white and then mounted to the wall, so the lighting's from above. It won't affect any of the sky. Like I said, the relationship between the proposed sign and the building work well together. The 24 square feet just feels rather small on that wall. And then the neighbors, Home Depot's behind, Marshall's, and I think even LL Bean all have sizes that kind of fit their buildings too. Just kind of that zone. So that feel is what we're looking for Mill 77. So. And a big part of it is safety too. So as you're coming down Lafayette looking for it, if there isn't a sign on this kind of for the Lafayette roadside, you wouldn't see it until you had to turn your neck around to see the main entrance maybe. So that's sort of the reason for the Lafayette Road sign.
Questions, comments from members of the board?
Are we taking jurisdiction?
That's if we have questions before we do that, or if people are ready to jump right in and take jurisdiction.
I move that we find this application complete and accept jurisdiction.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed?
This is just a procedural matter.
Yep. You haven't been approved yet, don't get all excited. So that was 6-0, Rick.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments for the applicant from any members of the board now?
So today, what would be permitted just by walking into the town administrator's office, or the zoning, planning and zoning office would be a 24 square foot sign, 1 or 2.
One,
Even when they don't have access to any
yep,
street sign.
right.
Yes. Similar in size, maybe to like some of the small businesses inside the strip mall, some of those small signs that they have up on there.
So I mean, from the applicant's perspective, could they have come here and proposed a 70-square-foot road sign instead, monument sign?
No,
But if
because
it-
the site already has a monument sign, but I suppose if this board wanted to give them,
No, I'm just trying to make sure, because it's not a unique parcel.
yeah, so, I mean, could they have? Yes, it would be up to you whether you thought that was
No,
adequate or not.
I'm just trying to figure out if that the former Staples site is a unique piece of land with its own frontage, or is it all a part of the one WS Associates?
It is its own lot according to the tax maps.
So then why couldn't they just apply for a 70
Yeah,
square foot?
so it is a, so,
I'm just trying to
yes.
understand what would prevent them from adding that.
Only the owner of the property, which is the
Right, the owner of the property, they, I suppose they could put up a 60-square-foot monument sign somewhere along there, that lot. I would have to
And so
see
they-
where the current monument sign is.
Yeah, so they would technically be entitled to that,
unless it's in the setback.
okay, but, and then they'd be entitled to an additional 24 square foot wall sign.
One wall sign and one monument.
Correct.
Okay, I'm just putting that out there in context for what's being
In
proposed. so that-
theory, I'm not guaranteeing anything,
No,
but
I'm-
in theory, you're correct.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure that there's a, sorry, Phil, that there's a juxtaposition here on it, because it sounds like we're just judging it based on you're only allowed 24 square feet, but in fact, you could probably make an argument that they probably could be entitled to 84 square feet if they were to proceed with a monument sign plus a wall sign.
Possibly.
I can see how, I've actually been in the store too, but, and I remember the old Staples, I can see the need for two signs, because like, to see it from Route 1, you kind of need something in the front, whether it's gonna be on the building or a monument sign. But the entrance is actually back on the side, and you get to it by driving in the main entrance to that whole center, and then you have to turn right and work your way up the side. So I can see how you need one on the side, like where their door is, so that you're sending your car in the right place, you're not like driving in, like where am I actually driving to get to that building? But then you also want something to see from Route 1, so that when you're driving, you slow yourself down fast enough, you know where you're gonna turn, you found your store. So, I'm ready to say right now is that I can see the need for two signs on that building, and it's pretty large.
I agree that on the two signs, we had the same issue with LL Bean.
Oh, yeah.
And LL Bean has a sign on the side as well, because they're the last property out. And I think your sign is very nice. I think it's too big, both for the space and for the standards set by the International Sign Association, which I did look at, and specifically the sign facing Lafayette Road. And the International Sign Association says that a sign that's parallel to the roadway needs to be 70% larger than a sign over your front door because of the traffic. And then they give you are you aware of this? They give you a formula.
The breakdown, yes.
How
Yeah,
fast
yeah.
the cars are going and so forth. So I did that, I looked at that to see how it would work with this. And the maximum, the size that the sign association says is appropriate for being able to see it from enough distance behind to be able to react and get in, make a right turn and get in there, is 12 and a half square feet. Now, 12 and a half square feet on that facade is silly. It's too small.
Yeah, I was gonna say, usually I've seen them by inches,
Yeah.
and they'll say, it's more for, well, the chart that that I use a lot is the one for US DOT numbers and, regulation heights
Yeah.
for, and, it's like 4 inches for 50 feet and that type of thing. It's a little bit
Say that again? I'm having a
It's-
great deal of trouble.
I'm
hearing
sorry, I
you.
was just, usually it's
1 inch
for,
for every 25 feet?
yeah, that's safe,
Yeah.
yeah. So it basically runs into that. Where this is more of a sign, like you said, it's less directional and more just a kind of a logo and a name.
Well, that brings me to my second point, which is, you know, this is significantly larger than the ordinance, which, you know, is okay,
True.
you need that sign.
Yeah.
Is significantly larger than is needed to be able to see it and react. And this is not, you know, one of the issues, or a couple of the issues here is, this, I think, and I haven't measured, would be the biggest sign in that plaza, and you're the closest store to the road. And I'm hoping that we can compromise on a more suitable sign that still works with you know, the size of the facade, and gives you what you need, but just for identification purposes or, you know, advertising purposes, that's not what it's for. I would also add that one of the things that I've not been able to find in the sign association is any reference to the need for a directional sign. For instance, everybody in Northampton knows where the store is, so they don't need a sign. They know right where to go. Anybody who doesn't live in Northampton but lives nearby, Hampton and Rye, they probably know where it is, but anybody else, like the summer tourists and so forth, they're gonna put their GPS on. They're not
Well-
gonna go, let's see what this is. Anyway, I'm hoping that you will see that if you will compromise on a bit of a smaller size, you will still get what you need, which is alerting people from, I forget what it is, 185 feet away to, that's the store, and still making it sized with the facade. You know, the Staples issue was there was a great deal of controversy. I wasn't on the planning board then, but I've read the minutes, and there was a great deal of division on that planning board about the size of the Staples sign. Anybody who was on the board can remember that, I guess, but I'm hoping that you will agree to a smaller font size than 4 feet.
Okay. Are you thinking about just the Lafayette sign or the
both
entrance
of them.
one?
I mean, the over the front door, I don't even want to say what the table says, how big it needs to be read from, I calculated 50 feet to the road. I don't know if that's right or not, but both of them, I think, are too large. And, you know, we try to be consistent with people who want larger signs. We understand that you have to fit the facade.
Yeah.
The Shaw's sign is smaller, and their facade is, I haven't measured it, it looks at least close to the wall facing Lafayette Road. So it's a very pretty sign, but if you would agree to a smaller, even, you know. What did we do with O'Brien's? Do you remember?
We still haven't taken jurisdiction yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Getting into the dirty details, so.
How did I get
thought
going
we
on
already
that?
voted that we
Did
found
we?
it complete.
Rick, sorry, did we take?
Had-
Yeah, sorry.
Phil,
my
Nancy-
problem. My
Nancy,
mistake.
second
My-
by Phil.
My mistake, I'm sorry.
We didn't vote,
I
did we vote?
apologize,
We
we
did.
voted. I'm sorry.
I recall it was magnanimous.
It's getting
It's
getting late. It's
Yeah.
getting late.
I'm just, you know, it just, everybody, we understand, everybody wants the biggest sign they can possibly get, we get it. But we have to keep some semblance of fairness to everybody.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
Did you, I assume you've tried to, my initial reaction in looking at this is the letters seem just a little bit large. I get the sense, I don't think they were as too large, as Nancy said. Has the vertical dimension of the green area actually been measured?
It has.
And it is what?
It runs like 60 inches tall. Is it 60? I do have it in notes, and when we scaled the photos, that's what we use. We scale to the photo, and then that's how we get our letter heights.
So the way I looked at it, basically the green area, if the green area is 60 inches and you're proposing 48 inches for the letter heights, you're basically using 80% of the, what I'll kind of call a background area for the sign.
Sure.
So, again, just one person's opinion, my reaction is probably 36-inch high letters would probably look pretty good and have a nice green border around them, top and bottom as well as ends. But again, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, if we came
But
to,
it does look like you've, for 48 inches, you fairly accurately represented them on that green background, so.
yeah, I think it came from, I wish I had a printout, and I wish I had the original Staples sign, but it was kind of what we drew from. We said, well, you know, here's kind of what we were aiming
The
for.
original Staples sign had 5-foot-high letters, and it was 25 feet wide.
That's what it was, 60-inch tall letters, yeah. That's what I guessed.
I had somebody ask me for the specs.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's, I found old photos, but nothing, you know, official,
Yeah.
just kind of stuff
So
on
the Staples
Google.
sign gobbled up the whole green area.
Yep, and then it was, you know, large on the side as well.
Am I the only one here who was on the board at that time?
No, I was.
Shep
yeah.
was.
Yeah, I don't know what you remember, Shep, but what I remember was a huge controversy.
I remember
I can't
Lisa
even
not
remember
being
which
very
side I
happy
was
with
on.
you. I remember Lisa not being very happy with you.
Lisa
is
was
what I
very
remember.
unhappy with me. But
You survived.
the point of this is, Lisa's my wife. The point of this is that one of the bones of contention after the fact was that the Staples sign didn't really do what the board thought it was approving.
Really?
And it was much, much larger than anybody thought. And I think, as I think Tim said, it looks like you've done a very good job of scaling this to this thing. The recollection of the controversy that I had was that the scaled, so-called scaled sign that
They
Staples
sent in
people
was-
gave us turned out not to be what it looked like in the end.
Yeah, that happens.
So, but in any case, one thing I want to say is we adopted what our conditional use permitting process for signs precisely for this reason. We wanted to specify some requirements that if somebody were willing to just do the sign and it would satisfy their needs, they go to the building inspector, he writes out the permit, you do the sign. But if you have conditions that make that not appropriate for your business, you can get a conditional use permit to do something outside those restrictions. So it's not, we use the language as if it's the requirement is 24 feet. The requirement, if you want to get the building inspector to sign off on it without coming to this board, is you do whatever those.
Sure.
And I consider
Yeah, perfect.
those, they're not minima, they're not maxima, they're just, we accept these. But if you want to do more than that, then you come in and you explain your reasons you want it, which you have done. And then we try to come to some judgment, again, I'll call on that word again tonight, about what's reasonable under the circumstances, and we have to take into account what we've said to the last person who came in and wanted some bigger sign, and what we want to be able to say to the next person. And that's how you get to the point of what's fair
Sure.
for everyone. And Tim said he thought 3 feet, and you scale that, I don't know what that goes to, 3/4 of 212 is 162, if
You're,
think is right.
yeah, you're on it.
Excuse me?
Engineer.
Yeah.
I'm proposing letters 3/4 as large as they are.
Right,
Now
25%.
Which would now take 60% of the background field rather than 80%.
I did some math, and I got, for a 38-inch high letter,
36.
36.
yeah, just my previous math before this meeting, came to 44 square feet. So it's probably
Well,
about,
you're gonna, yeah.
it's probably about 40 square feet when it comes down to 36, right?
You're gonna go 25% less on the 212 inches wide, and because 36 is 25% less of 40.
212 is 53.
Yeah.
Seems pretty fair.
53.
212
So-
divided by 4.
Rick, Jen, help me out here. The reason I lost track where we were in our process with this case was I was thinking about our
Minus
sign
53.
ordinance being slightly unique, that to get a conditional use permit, we also request a waiver, which we don't, we require a waiver, which we don't do on many other conditional use permits. So I have a procedural question here in terms of how does the board move forward?
The waiver form is just is just used for the applicant to provide his justifications to you. Because technically, by granting a conditional use permit, you are granting a waiver to the zoning ordinance. So basically, all you have to do is either approve, deny. The waiver form is just there for him to show his
Are we approving or denying
justification.
just the cup, or do we approve or deny the waiver?
You would just approve or deny the cup.
Yes.
Okay, so the ordinance isn't clear on that.
The ordinance isn't.
Okay.
It's just the way we have to go about it.
So any other comments at this time before we get public comment, if there's any?
I think 3 feet is,
So at 9:33, I will open a public comment period on this application if anyone would like to speak to it. Going once, going twice, sold. So at 9:34, I will close the public comment period with no comment made. Any further discussion? Does somebody want to make a motion?
are you good with 3-foot letters instead of 4 feet?
Yeah, I think that's a reason,
And,
definitely agree.
and the same reduction in the width side to side.
Oh, yes, that's it's just.
Proportional.
Proportional fit,
Proportional.
yeah, I wouldn't,
3/4 the height, 3/4 the width.
I have 100
36 inches by 159 inches.
I have
I'm gonna write that
140.
down so I
Whatever
can
the
match
proportion is,
this.
it's the height that's the,
1/4 of
it's the
212 is
issue.
53 times 3 is 159.
Okay.
Oh, I did 212 minus 53.
I'll make a motion that we approve,
Did something wrong.
we approve this sign, which is very nice, by the way.
Thank you.
At reducing the letter height from 4 feet to 3 feet on both signs.
And the width proportionally.
And
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
I'll second.
So we have a motion, we have a second from Lori. Any further? Jen?
You might want to specify and to allow for a second sign where one is normally allowed.
And to
Yes.
allow for a second sign that will be on the west-facing wall of,
Of
The
the same
building.
dimensions.
With existing lighting.
with existing lighting of the same, and whatever,
Sounds good.
as produced in the application.
Lori seconded.
Yeah.
So Rick, you have the motion?
Yep, 3-foot proportional width. Allow for a second sign on the west wall with existing lighting as presented in the application.
And the second sign is the same size.
Correct, on west wall with same dimensions.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? You're good, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Just, you'll have to submit to me a new drawing showing those dimensions on it,
Sure.
so that I can attach it to the application.
Do you need new application notes or anything like that?
We'll work on it. Just send me a picture with the new dimensions, and then I'll work on the rest with you. Thank you.
We're sorry you had to wait so long and sit through 3 hours of other stuff. So sorry.
Thank you. So according to planning board rules, we need a motion to conduct new business after 9:30 at night. Would somebody like to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Nancy, seconded by Phil. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so moving on to our second case of new business this evening. This is case 2206. The applicant is Swampscott River Academy, Mount Prospect Academy, Inc., 14 Lafayette Road, Unit 4, Northampton, New Hampshire. The applicant requests a minor review for expansion of existing education academy activities into a second building on the 14 Lafayette Road South. The property owner is 14 Lafayette Road LLC, P.O. Box 695 Northampton, New Hampshire. The property location is 14 Lafayette Road, Northampton, New Hampshire. The map and lot number is 003-096-000. The zoning district is the IBR, Industrial Business Residential District. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening. My name is Nash Reddy. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to speak with people about our school, because rarely do I get the opportunity to do that, or at least speak with people who don't know what we do. And I have to apologize up front. I've been awake since 3 o'clock this morning, and I've been at work all day, so I'm a little bit tired, and I hope I can answer all of your questions. So yes, that is exactly why we're here. I did hear the chairman say earlier that he doesn't like things being handed out, so if anybody's interested at the end of my presentation, you'll like any information on our program. Swampscott River Academy is one of the newest programs as part of Mount Prospect Academy, which is out of Plymouth, New Hampshire. Although I'm not an attorney, and I am the principal of the school, I am here this evening to represent Amber, Hannah, AJ, Connie, Anna, Lily, Adriana, Lana, Alyssa, Madison, Bailey, and over 100 other girls who have actually been in our program since we opened our doors 2.5 years ago. For those of you that don't know what we do, we are a unique program. We're one of only 2 in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine collectively that provide services for girls who have had what I call trauma with a big T, but significant trauma. Girls who have been trafficked, who have been repeatedly sexually assaulted, who have tried to commit suicide repeatedly to the extent that they've been hospitalized. Oftentimes, the girls are coming to us from one of these locations. Our particular program is what's called Level 4. Level 5 does not exist in New England, and when students require that, they often go to Arkansas or Tennessee. They do not stay in New England. So our facility serves the purpose and the intent of helping these kiddos at a time in their life when they definitely could use our support. A little bit about me, just because I'm sure this is quite interesting for you folks. I was a high school teacher at one point. I was a special ed administrator in a number of school districts here in New Hampshire, including Manchester. I've worked in and out of public education for over 30 years. When Mount Prospect Academy approached me about opening up this new school, I thought, wow, a great opportunity to apply everything I know about what is appropriate for children and what is appropriate for learning. Everything we do at Swampscott is very different. We're project-based, we're activity-based. I always like to say we're the Waldorf School of Mount Prospect Academy because there's no internet, and that's because it's not safe for our students. The school opened in November of 2019, right before COVID, and we opened up in 2 rooms within the residential facility that's located sort of behind the Dunkin' Donuts in Hampton, 2.33 miles away from our current building. After 8 months in that program, my boss located this facility that we're in right now, which is 14 Lafayette, unit number 4. Relatively small space, I might add, for our 20 students and 14 staff. So that being said, I was fortunate enough to have access to a grant from the state of New Hampshire awarding monies for programs such as ours that might need more space due to COVID. We need more space just because we're on top of each other. Our school is currently approved for up to 24 students. The most we've ever had is 22. Right now, we currently have 20 students. I could come in tomorrow morning. I probably won't come in tomorrow morning, but I could come in tomorrow morning and we could have a new student that just arrived at night. 18 of the girls come from the residence, which is 2.33 miles down the road, and I did put in your packet kind of like an overview of where that residence is. There's different levels of care in that program, and what that basically means is how long those students are in that program. They are placed there by the Department of Health and Human Services of New Hampshire, Maine, Rhode Island. We have 2 students from Rhode Island right now, or Massachusetts. They are not placed there through the juvenile justice system. None of these students have committed crimes or are with us because of any type of judiciary action. Most of them are with us because they have parents that are incarcerated, dead, drug addicts, or completely neglectful of their children. So, this space across the parking lot opened up as a possibility for us, very exciting. What we would like to do with the space is have classrooms that are a little bit bigger than 10 by 13 feet. And our current classrooms, 10 by 13 feet, we have a hard time fitting 6 kids and 2 or 3 staff in them, plus furniture. We're kind of on top of ourselves over there. So that's the idea. I apologize, I'm running around, my mouth is quite dry. So what we would do is use this space over here for the majority of the classes. The space that we're currently in that's smaller will become a space where we have more individualized services for the kids. Our students are all girls, in case I didn't mention that. And a lot of times people come in, whether it's a caseworker, a physician's assistant, some other community-based support person to meet with the girls, and we often have a hard time finding space for that. So this space will be for the counseling services, the clinical services, more so, and then this will be more of the classrooms, which right now we do all of it in the one space, and it's really tight. I also brought, just in case you're interested, our program is, everybody that works in the program is highly trained in how to work with students that are products of trauma, and I could go on and on about this, and I won't. But basically, our foundation for our clinical treatment is through something called the ARC, and then we use therapeutic crisis intervention as a method to communicate, interact, and provide safe environment for the students. The students cannot be out of sight of adults at any time. Our facility is a locked facility. When students come into the building, like when people are touring, I always point this out.
You've got to kind of stay behind the
Yeah, sorry
podium.
about that. I don't want to stand in one place because that's boring. When people come in to tour the building, I explain that we use metal detecting wands with the students. Now, this isn't because they're going to bring in a knife or something to hurt us. It's because they're going to hurt themselves. So oftentimes they will pick up something in the parking lot, a piece of glass or a piece of metal, and if not to hurt themselves, to hurt someone else. So we have to be very careful. Everything that we do at the school is to keep the students safe. So other things about the school, let's see, what else? Kind of all over the map here. But basically, we're looking to use the new space so that we can have more realistic classroom sizes. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I went on.
Oh, nope.
Tired.
Jen?
Just a question, I think you just sort of answered it, but there's no intention of having like outdoor space for any portion of the learning that would go on? It would all be done inside?
So currently what we do, there's a grassy area here,
Okay.
and the landlord lets us use it, and it's all fenced in, we pay for the fencing. And we actually don't use that as much as we used to. What we tend to do, like we had a field day out there the other day, or we use it for like a carnival. For our athletic activities, we go off-site. We go to the sports barn, we go to Seacoast United, and then there's a local park, I can't think of the name of it right now, Dearborn Park, or sometimes we go for tennis and things like that. But we basically get in the vans and go somewhere else. There really isn't a space there. I was really disappointed because we're so citified, we can't, we have to go somewhere to do the athletic activities.
But just so the outdoor space you already use already exists on the site, correct?
Yes, but we don't use it that often, but yes.
Any other questions from members of the board? Somebody want to make a motion regarding?
I move that we find this application complete and accept jurisdiction.
Second.
Second by Phil. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Procedural.
Okay, just procedural. Any other questions, comments?
Well, I'm assuming at some point we'd get detailed drawings from an architect or an engineer to show applicable exits and safety precautions and everything else that these buildings are going to require.
Is this a change of use? This is a change of use, right?
Yes.
Well, it's an expansion of use, I would call
It's a
it.
minor site plan.
Yeah, so because the orange space is already an existing use, to change it to a school use, that's a different use within your zoning, it does require a change of use. It happens to be an expansion of a use already on the site as well.
So the Tiny Imprints, I'm not sure if I'm getting that right. The daycare was, this is kind of an odd happenstance, originally in this building, and they actually expanded into here. And I believe they have their own building now, on the
Yeah.
corner. But, I think that's why originally we were able to get into this space, but my boss handled that.
What- To Mr. Attella's comments, possibly a condition stating, that, the applicable town departments such as building and fire give their approvals as opposed to having the planning board go through all that kind of approval be,
Obviously, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd work for me.
Because just according to the seating, they got over 58 people in this space, if they occupy every chair. That's a lot of people.
Is that correct? 58 people in this
No,
room?
there's 20 students and 15 staff, and we're not all here all at the same time. And to that extent, the most students there would ever be would be 24, because that's all we're approved through the Department of Education. Also, the Department of Education has very strict requirements about safety in the building, and we did initially have the fire inspection and got all the, we're getting all new, my boss wants to get for us all new doors, it's important for us to have it safe, obviously.
So Jen, did you have?
My only other just comment is that it just be verified that the septic system is able to accommodate this use. Given that it was a daycare, I suspect that is not an issue, but just as a catching of it.
Any other questions, comments from the board at this time? So I'll go ahead and open a public comment period at 9:48. We'll go ahead and open a public comment period if anyone would like to comment. Going once, going twice. So seeing no one at 9:49, I'll go ahead and close the public comment period with no comments made. Any further discussion from the board?
Cue to you, Phil.
Another motion, please? I move we approve the application as presented with the condition that the applicant submit, or I'll say that the planning and zoning administrator receives a letter from relevant officials in the town of Northampton that the proposed use of unit, it's 1B is the new one, right?
Yes.
1B complies with the applicable fire safety and other security requirements.
Receive a certificate of occupancy per se?
Well, they'd have to receive a certificate.
Right.
Whatever, if that's.
Right, yep.
If they all do that for the certificate of occupancy, say,
Right.
So, excuse me, 1B is where they are, Unit 4 is where they're going.
No, I think it's the other way around.
We're in for, we're going to.
Ah, okay, sorry.
Wasn't there another condition from Jen?
what was Jen's condition?
Oh, just the adequate septic facilities
Adequate
be
septic.
verified.
Oh, and that, just add, thinking that.
Add that to your, yep.
Second.
So we have a motion, we now have a second by Nancy. Are you all set, Lori? Okay. Any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? Opposed? 6-0, Rick.
6-0, yep.
You're all set. Thank you for your patience this evening. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank
So
you
the
for
next
what
step will
you're
be
doing.
making sure we get those approvals from the building and fire. You can work with me through that.
Sorry you had to sit through so long to wait for this.
Okay, the last item this evening is the minutes from the April 19th work session.
I move we accept them as presented.
Second.
Motion by Phil, second by Nancy. All those in favor? It's unanimous, Rick.
Yep.
And we're adjourned at 9:52. Thank you, everybody.